welcome. It's obviously a special stream because I'm being joined by someone who some of you have not seen for most of you, if not all of you, have not seen for a very long time. So introducing to my left is Dan, also known, of course, as Modereach when he was at Jagex. So first of all, Dan, thank you for coming on to talk to me. And how's life? How are things for you?
Well, as I mentioned before the start of the stream, I'm very cold. Still trying to warm up. Life's fine. That's good. Definitely an awful lot better than what it was, and just getting on with my own thing really. It's I'm sure we'll elaborate a little bit more.
We don't have to. I imagine the elaboration will probably come towards the end anyway when we get into after Jagex. So it's up to you if you want to elaborate on how life is now. You may do so. It's really up to you.
Well, I adopted a cat from a rescue 2 weeks ago now. I'm looking at getting a dog as well, and I've booked most of my holidays for this year. Other than that, same old really. Just games, League of Legends, more esports tournaments, seeing family, the usual.
So I should mention, if you're wondering about Dan's microphone or camera, I do want to point out that Dan, in his dedication to do this, has actually bought equipment to make sure he can do this.
Yeah.
So
until yesterday, I didn't actually own a webcam, so I had to go out and quickly buy one. So apologies if the quality's poor, but I just bought the first one that was on Amazon. It's a Logitech. Actually, I don't even know what it is. What is it? It is a Logitech C290, I think. There you go.
What microphone are you using?
It's a Razer Siren X.
I see, okay.
It was on Amazon's last Amazon Day sale. It was down to like 40 quid, so just snap one up.
Gotcha. Okay, so I guess without further ado, let's just jump into this. So obviously, before you did Jagex, everyone has their early life, what they did before then. So I mean, feel free to start from whenever or wherever you want to in that period before joining Jagex. But how was the early life of Dan?
Before Jagex, didn't really do anything interesting. I just played an awful lot of RuneScape. We had quite a big. It was actually Skype back then, and we had a significant Skype chat group of, I think like 30 of us, all playing maxing at the time and doing bosses, etc. And I was supposed to be studying computer science at sixth form, or at least I thought I was studying computer science at sixth form, until it turned out about 4 months into my course when I realised I'm quite slow on this one. When I realised that I wasn't doing anything logical, it was all very basic IT. Still PowerPoints and film production. So I don't think I'm doing computer science. And my sixth form realised they put me on the wrong course. I was put on AS Applied IT.
Oh my lord!
I mean, they fully apologised, and they offered me the chance of restarting the following year, because I missed out on a fair bit of the curriculum. But at that point, I think I was quite a lazy, rebellious teenager that I just thought, I can't go do this. I'd rather just go and play RuneScape.
So, you mentioned about RuneScape. When did you first start playing it?
I first heard about it in about 2002, walking to school with friends that I'd made in my first year of 2002, 2001, one of those 2 years. I'd made in my first year 7 form, and they were talking about RuneScape, and I remember thinking, I'll go home and play that. For the life of me, could never find the game. It was always ROON-scape, and never finding what it is I needed ever. It was only when I was at a friend's sort of birthday party sleepover when I was about 13, I think, in 2005 maybe. Did I see people playing RuneScape? And I was like, oh shit, I remember that. That's familiar. It's a name I recognise. And all my friends are playing it. It's like, well, why haven't I heard of this? Why am I not involved in this? So I created an account, and from there started playing. I think I actually joined a week after Farming came out, I think that's when I started playing. If I can remember my account age anyway, it was about a week after Farming came out. So ever since then, just sort of got heavily immersed into it. I mean, so immersed, I pretty much traded everything I had in life, really, for playing video games. It was already quite heavily into my games. I had every console, huge on Pokemon, all the Game Boys, PlayStation, had an Xbox, played Halo religiously. It was always something I was really interested in doing and pursuing into a career, but I kind of lost that drive really about kind of about the time I left sixth form. It was more I'm sort of lazing about, not doing an awful lot. I'm quite creative. I've always have been very creative. Always had an awful lot of ideas I wanted to do, and I'd experiment in various world builders at the time and do online courses. But I think it was just all overshadowed by the friend circle that I had at the time playing RuneScape. That it always just drew me back to cancelling anything academic and anything creative and just playing RuneScape.
So, when you obviously come into RuneScape itself, I mean, is there any early stories you remember from those days when you were playing?
Not really. I mean, just like most friends groups or clans or clan chats or whatever we want to call them. I was a regular on the old World 24 Edgeville, which was sort of the more popular world where all the high-level kids hang out. I was close to maxed at the time. But no, nothing notable really. I just did an awful lot of PVM. Never done PvP, never touched it. But PvP is actually my favourite content. Just sort of hang around. It was actually around about 2008, I think. 2008, late 2008, probably even 2009, that I saw Jagex were hiring and just thought, well, sod it. I'm not even 18 yet. I think I'm still 17. But I threw out an application because who doesn't want to work with their favourite game studio? And I threw out an application. I had done some jobs prior to that, but it was more supporting my dad's business. My dad's a property developer, builds houses, and various other sort of techie-based jobs that I kind of used as my work experience at the time to really try and get into Jagex. Wasn't really expecting it to go anywhere because why would Jagex hire somebody who has dropped out of sixth form, hasn't really done anything which is remotely related to the games industry and has virtually no commercial experience at all. But I just threw out an application when I was still 17 and carried on playing RuneScape until eventually I heard from them.
So
it was about 2 months when I turned 18.
Which role was this that you went for?
It was actually a night shift role, player support.
Okay.
This was when... Were you at Jagex when Jagex still had the building on One Business Park?
Not 1BP, but 120. Sorry, 140.
140?
Yeah,
okay.
140. Yeah, 140. Yeah.
This was the time... So, for the people that don't know, Jagex used to have 2 offices. I think at one point when they started, they were in one office, which was the St. John's Innovation Centre. They then moved to 140 Science Park, which is opposite the Innovation Centre area. And next to the Innovation Centre, there is the Business Park. And on the Business Park, they decided to put the player support team, the community management team, the localization support team, funnel support team. Anybody who wasn't primarily involved in the production, I think, was largely just annexed to one Business Park. And I joined Jagex at the time. They were still at 1BP. So I applied for just a player support role. It just a foot in the door, just get me in, basically. I just want to work for Jagex, because who doesn't when you're a player, and all you've ever done up until this point in your life is play RuneScape. And I remember I was doing Sarah solos on a Skype call with a friend in an Australian world, which was already very laggy because no worlds were free, when I got a phone call, and it was from a private number. And I still to this day don't really answer private numbers unless I know I'm expecting a call or I'm in a mood where I want to shout at the inevitable scam. Because you still get scam calls now, saying I've been in a car accident. And I remember picking it up, and Matt mentioned this as well, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on what Matt said. It was a guy called Francesco, who was the head of recruitment at the time. And Matt said this, and I will attest to what Matt said. I will vouch for it. This guy, Francesco, lovely guy, but he is the most Italian person you have ever met. If you were to take this Mario, he spoke. Everything had that upwards inflection. It was like, hello, Dana. It was so, honestly, it sounds like you're exaggerating, but I shit you not, this guy, so Italian. And it was brilliant. And he just phoned me up and said, hey, we've got your application here submitted from back when. We'd like to invite you for an assessment day. Are you up for it? It's like, holy fuck, sorry about Sarah, I'm lagging, and what's going on? This is Jagex phoning me. Oh my god, I don't know what's happening. And it's like, oh wow, okay, sure. Obviously, a lot more hype than that. I remember running downstairs to my parents going, oh my fucking god, I got an interview at Jagex. And my brother also played Grizz at the time. I don't think he really believed me.
It was before you got one of those classic inbox messages of like...
It was like, okay, shit. And then I get the email through, obviously, inviting me to the assessment day, and it's from @jagex.com. It's Francesco. It's like, holy fuck, I've actually been invited for an interview. All my friends are just sort of hyped, because it's like, why would they pay me? So I went to One Business Park, which was the interview day, and I went for an assessment day. And I remember thinking, the email, and I still got the email till actually. I found it not too long back when I was going through and clearing out some of my old email addresses. But I still had the email, and in it said, wear sort of casual clothes. We're a game studio. We're very relaxed. Wear what you want. There's me thinking, fuck, I need to make an impression. Wear your best clothes you've got. So I turned up to the One Business Park unit, and Mod Paul M at the time, Paul Mayer at the time, was the one who answered the door. I said, I'm here for an interview. And inside the area, this sort of foyer area, there's already like 15 people or so. And I walk in, and they're all in just normal clothes. And there's me, like, wearing the nicest iron shirt I own that still fits, trousers, shoes. Never been to Cambridge before. Never been to a job interview before, ever. And I was speaking to a guy called Zach and Chris. He went by the sort of pseudonym Griff, though, and he was the night shift operations lead, whereas Zach was just the team leader for night shift. And it's even to this day, I mean, I've not done an assessment day since then, but even to this day, that assessment day was weird. It was weird because we did some team building exercises.
Oh,
and
no.
Those are pretty normal. It is pretty normal. It's like, okay, so we're split into groups. There's 15 of you, I think, maybe 16. So it's half and half. And we're each given a particular role, and we're told there's a rocket going to the moon for whatever reason, and the Earth is dying. You need to fight your case with this profile we've given you as to why you should be on it. I think I was like a 42-year-old woman who's gone through the menopause, but I'm an expert in like microbiology or something, and I have to argue my case for going on this rocket, otherwise I'm destined to die on Earth. And that's pretty cool. So, but at the same time, it just goes to show, in that group of people, there were a few other people that did actually end up working at Jagex in different departments. So I remember there's a guy there called Lewis who actually ended up working on the art team. There was one guy there, and we were taken upstairs after the sort of team building exercises, and we were put on some general player support queries. So we had to answer an account appeal, we had to action a snapshot, and also action an offense appeal, and give our justification as to why we've done what we've done, using game knowledge to explain the context behind things people were saying. And there's one guy going, "What's a noob?" And we all turned to him and said, "You are in the wrong interview. You're in the wrong interview." And I remember him also saying, "Why would anybody play games like this?" It's like, why the fuck did you apply for this studio? Why are you here? And he was quite an old guy, but we remember it. I remember it quite vividly because it's just obviously the only assessment day I've ever done, and it's just quite strange that you'd be in an assessment day with somebody who's applied for the role, knowing this is a game studio, but question why anybody would play games in the first place, and then ask a basic question like, "What's a noob?" I ended up getting the job along with 4 others. There was 4 positions, and I joined night shift. I was only on night shift for about 8 months, but I joined night shift. And I even had a few interesting stories from night shift.
So you just turned 18, correct?
Yep.
You've just been given your first job ever. It's on the game that you love and enjoy. First of all, you're not local to Cambridge, correct?
Nope.
So how is it telling your family, and how did you do the preparations to move?
Okay. So I've never moved out before until that point. I lived with my family. My family live in London. They still do. The only time I've ever been to Cambridge was for the interview. I don't know anybody there. I don't know the first thing about moving into anything. I don't know what websites to go to. Fortunately, Francesco, obviously, when he sent me the "you've been accepted" invitation, he did link a few links. And one of them wasn't Rightmove, but a few sort of boarding websites to help people get in. And this was about, my start date was actually 2 weeks from the date of the email, so I had 2 weeks to find a place and move in.
Wow.
Which, is pretty somewhat standard if you're that local. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me now if someone offered me, if I was still living in London now, I live in Cambridge again now, but I moved back to London, but if someone was offering me that position now, 2 weeks would be plenty of time for me to find a place now. So in hindsight, it's not actually that bad. But at the time, my first time moving out, the onus isn't on Jagex to support me. It's my decision. I need to relocate, or I need to commute. But went through every website I could find and that he'd given me to try and find somewhere to live, not knowing how much rent typically is in Cambridge. Cambridge, for the record, is a fucking expensive place to live.
Cambridge is horrendous for rent.
This is me as an 18-year-old with no money, really. My parents have financially supported me my entire life up to this point. I've got no first paycheck. I can't afford any deposits. So I remember emailing Francesco being, can you help me? Can you do something? And he put out an internal post on the intranet, and some guy who was a finance director, I think, at Jagex at the time, a guy called Chris, lovely guy, said, I have a spare room in my house. I usually rent it out to first-time Jagex starters who end up staying for a while. It's yours for X amount a month. So I have no idea if that's an awful lot, but it's my only option. I'll take it. My parents paid the first month's rent. And that was my sort of first step into the real commercial world, with my first set of responsibilities, looking after myself, being self-sufficient, and sort of getting the foot into the commercial world that is the games industry, really.
So, coming to Night Shift, you mentioned, as a role itself, like, is there anything you want to talk about the role itself, or do you want to just go into the stories about Night Shift?
Player support was pretty cool, actually. It was a lot of fun. I'll preface now by saying that everything I talk about when it comes to Jagex was about Jagex at the time I was there.
Which, just for clarification, is from what year to what year?
September 2010 to April 2015.
Gotcha.
So everything I talk about and criticize and praise, etc., is from that period, and it's not reflective of the current management, because obviously that management is now totally different to when I was there. And I know things have changed since then, so I can't say, I'll say this and that, but it's by the by. But the Night Shift was interesting because player support is actually quite a lot of fun. And as you're a player, for example, you might see a meme go around on the forums or Reddit of people saying, "Oh, look at what I did in my account, my offense appeal. I said my cat was on my keyboard and they accepted it. Jagex are so fucking stupid." It's like, no, what you said wasn't offensive in the first place, so there's no real reason for us to leave the offence on your account. So we granted it irrespective of what you've said in your account appeal, your offence appeal. It's just not offensive. That, or the person who actioned the offence didn't understand the context, and I do. So when I'm accepting your appeal, even though you wrote Jagex accept my appeal or I fucking bomb you, I didn't do that because I was scared you were going to bomb us. I did that because you didn't actually commit an offence. Those are actually an awful lot of fun. Some people put some really creative shit in those boxes. Props to an awful lot of people. A lot of people put really stupid shit like, my cat did it, or you idiots, do you not understand what this means? It's like, well, no, like, you weren't just saying KKK for a laugh. You were saying it, and underneath it, you were saying all sorts of really racist shit. So, that was a lot of fun. But one thing is, Night Shift, if you've never done Night Shift before, people in chat, I can only really speak on behalf of my experience, but my God, if you've never been a nerd and done all-nighters, doing Night Shift is hard. It's like driving into a wall and then going in reverse. Basically, your body clock has gone one way the entire direction, in one direction its entire life, and you reverse that and have to try sleeping during the day. It makes or breaks you. I didn't really have so much of an issue because I pretty much played throughout the night, slept during the day anyway, because sweaty RuneScape gamer, didn't really have much going on in his life at the time. Who cares? But I saw some people join, and it broke them. It really broke them, and they ended up moving to day shift or just leaving. But I think the only most notable thing about my time in player support was I accidentally closed. My keyboard accidentally closed every single snapshot in the snapshot queue, and there's something like 20,000 of them.
How?
So it was actioned by the numpad on your keyboard. So like 7 was like website advertising, 1 was offensive language, minor, major, etc., and 2 was like item scamming, etc. So the offences were mapped to the keys, and the enter key was accept. And if you accepted it with no offences, it would just close it as though there's been no offence. And my enter key got stuck down, and we went from they got stuck down, and I hadn't noticed this because we were being sort of trained at the same time. And I remember coming back to the queue, and it's like, oh, they're all empty. It's like, oh shit, my enter key's stuck down. I've just closed 20,000 snapshots. And this is at a time when Jagex was like sampling us as part of training to see what our accuracy is like, to see whether or not this is a position we're even capable of carrying on doing. So I remember closing 20,000 and being like, I'm so sorry, Milton, I didn't mean it. My keyboard's stuck down. It's still stuck. Look, it wasn't me. And he then disappears off to see some tech guys who undo all the offences that I've not applied to everybody who's been in the queue. I mean, there could have been, suicide attempts in there. Those were actually very common, and various other things in there that I obviously accidentally closed. But that's about the only notable thing I have from night shift. The only other thing really would be I was responsible for. This is a weird job title, but I was the bug investigations lead for night shift, which in a nutshell meant that it was my job to track and report all bugs that were reported through the bug queue to the day shift team in a way that made it, just basically a handover. And every now and then you would need to escalate a bug that needed immediate attention, something that had gone out in the update on that day. There's no dev team support overnight, and you have to phone people up. And phoning up Ash is always a lot of fun, because it's the only way I can describe it is I just imagine Ash sitting in this armchair, a wingback chair, with a phone next to him, asleep with his eyes open, waiting for the phone to ring. Because every time you'd phone Ash, he would pick up almost on like the third ring, and you'd explain the bug to him, and he'd just say, "I'll be there," and he would come in and he'll deal with it. So that was always a lot of fun, and that was my first real introduction to Ash, because I used to escalate quite a few things that Ash ended up fixing, and Ash and I built up a rapport from that. Obviously, there are other bug trackers that did the same thing, but I don't think they really played RuneScape, so Ash didn't really have much of a relationship with them. So
I can attest to the awkwardness of escalating, and I can't imagine what it was like for a night shift. There's been the occasional times where it's like being 2 or 3 a.m. and I'm having to make this decision of something that I've seen in game. It's like, do I escalate knowing I have to, rinse someone a godly hour of the night to then say, this is going on, and there's like a guilt in it, because you kind of feel bad for doing it, but then in reality, I'm appreciative of the fact that this service is like that to help you do it. So
yeah, and there was always that guilt factor, because there were some devs who lived 20 odd miles away and they didn't have remote access from home, and depending on who was on call, I don't know who was on call, I've just been given a number to phone. That number's a separate mobile device that the developer has to take home during the times they're on call, and it's going to be one of 4 people. Fortunately, I know one of them very well. I knew one of them very well at the time, and the other 3 were just Jagex people, one being Ash, that I didn't know prior to my employment at Jagex. So I did actually have 2 friends at Jagex before I joined. But it is quite, you do feel very guilty when you have to phone them up and you have to explain the bug to them, and then sometimes they would turn around and say, that's not important enough for me to come in, it can wait for the morning. On my side, because Jagex was very at least player support was very policy driven. It's you stick to these guidelines, you do not deviate from them. And we only have one sort of minor director or ops lead who's responsible for night shift, and he doesn't turn up till 4 a.m. and I start my shift at 10 p.m. So if something happens at 2 a.m., all I've got is my team lead, who doesn't do this, who just says, follow the guidelines. If it meets all the criteria, then you escalate. And you phone this person at 3 a.m. who then says, why the fuck have you phoned me? Don't phone me again about this issue. You think, oh shit, it makes me look like an idiot. But, there was that. But at the same time, it was a necessary evil. Sometimes it was a really serious issue. And more often than not, it was about the content update that had gone live that day. And it was pertinent to that. Otherwise, there's not an awful lot. But player support is fun because it's a sort of close-knit group of people. It's just you and like 5 other people at night. You're sort of there for each other. There's nobody else in the office. So it was fun for that sort of. But I think eventually the game knowledge I had and the experience I had through all the bug tracker stuff is what led me to then my next step in Jagex, which was QA. I was invited to join the QA team at that time. That was around sort of mid-2011. So I was only in player support for something like 8 months.
So you mentioned, just to clarify for those in the chat, just so you understand what's going on here, we're essentially going from the start of the timeline to the end of the timeline. So for those of you, you're gonna have to be patient when it comes to certain sections of this. So just want to make that very clear to you all. This isn't going to be rushing over to specific sections of Dan's time at Jagex and so on. We're going, as I've done with all the other streams, going from essentially the start of their timeline to the end. So. And obviously after that, so just to give you a heads up on that one. Going back to what you said, you mentioned, you come up to QA. Internal application, was there anything that stood out when applying for QA, or was it just cut and dry?
It's pretty cut and dry. They invited me to apply for an open role, so I did. I didn't actually have to put the application down myself. as an interview with Vicky and Connor Crowley, who was actually
Wow, Connor
he
Crowley, my
was
goodness.
he was Stellar Dawn QA at the time. This was before Stellar Dawn had been cancelled. So it was just sort of, let's have I don't know why the actual RuneScape QA manager at the time wasn't there. I have no idea, but Vicky was QA lead, so Vicky was there. But Connor joined, and it was a pretty generic interview. I didn't really, nothing really notable came from it other than they were really impressed with the work I had done as my night shift bug lead role, reporting bugs to the QA team, etc. And they were quite happy with the sort of communication that eventually I was accepted. I don't know who else applied. I don't know if I was the only one they invited. I don't know who I was up against, but I got the position, and I ended up joining QA team straight after that.
First project that you worked on as QA?
Oh, I can't remember actually. I think it might have been RuneSpan. I think.
RuneSpan?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I think it was RuneSpan. And at this point in time, Jagex were very familiar with the fact that or at least the QA team were very familiar with the fact that I'm very adept at engineering exploits, because that's something that they commented on in my interview, and that was largely because of the bugs that I had worked with them through the night shift queue and with Ash. I don't know if Ash put in a good word or not, but they asked me explicitly when I joined QA, can you exploit this content and find issues that other members of the QA team can't find? And at the time, I think the QA team was something like 35 people. I don't know any of them there, but I did soon learn that these people don't really know what to do other than to follow a test plan. They would have a test plan which says, talk to the NPCs. Is everything spelled correctly? Does the NPC respond? Does it have a chat head? Does the chat head move? Yes, tick the boxes, done. There was nothing there which explicitly said, review the code to make sure that all these safety checks are there, and at the same time try doing this and explore these checks to see if you can engineer something interesting that shouldn't happen.
So a lot of outside the box thinking then, basically.
Yeah, a lot of outside the box thinking, and they didn't really have that, which is why I was invited to join for that reason. Actually, in that year, it was sort of mid 2011. Between 2011 and mid 2012, there was a fuck ton of really high-profile, popular exploits in the game, like people smuggling Barber Salt rings out of the Barber Salt minigame, and people invisible PKing in the wilderness. That between Ash and I, it was exclusively Ash and I, we fixed almost all of those bugs in that 1 year time frame. And these are bugs that have existed for like 6 years, and they didn't sort of have anybody who could figure these out. Nobody used outside the box thinking to track what players are doing in game, or to experiment with parts of the game they know are quite dodgy, but no one's ever thought to look into why.
Dungeoneering?
Dungeoneering was out before I joined.
Okay, good. So
I was already 99 Dungeoneering when I joined. I actually got Dungeoneering quite early, but no, I didn't have anything to do with Dungeoneering. I did do a few Dungeoneering related projects, like I can't remember what they're called, like sagas. I think
yeah, Frantic Sagas, yeah.
Yeah. I worked on a couple of those, and then a few others. I can't remember what came after RuneSpan. I know that when I joined the QA team, the very first thing I did was to get all the runes out of RuneSpan, because some basic security checks went on there, and that was. I think his mod name is ModPie. His name's John.
Yeah, spot on.
I think he was relatively new to the dev team, because he's a fucking good developer. He's solid. He's fully aware of things that can go wrong. But I think that might have been his very first project. I think
so. I spoke to John 3 weeks ago, if I remember off the top of my head on timeline history. Yeah. Obviously, we talked about RuneSpan. I think it was the second or third project. I think so. He was still obviously relatively new in that regard. Yeah. RuneSpan was like his first big project, if I remember correctly.
So I was living, actually. I'd moved in with Jules, who was Mod Slayer, or Miss Slayer, whatever she goes by, and she was with Mod Ian at the time. They were together, and I'd moved in with them as I joined the QA team. And she was a good friend of John's. I remember John and Jules saying to me, just break this, find a way of breaking it. And that was sort of my first real introduction to, this is how QA is, this is what the QA team does, this is what everything, this is what my role in the QA team is going to be. RuneSpan was sort of the first introduction to that, and then after that it was just various different projects. Eventually you sort of build up a good idea and a good mental understanding and picture as to what devs commonly forget to do, So when a certain developer is on the project and you've always done a piece of content, you would understand, or you'd look at it and think, oh, I know this particular developer doesn't ever put these checks into for these types of triggers, for example. So when I go into it, I just have to look at all the things that he typically doesn't do, and then all these things come out of it. So
the best thing I have ever found was so there was this boss that came out in 2016 called Telos, and he initially came out, and the idea is that you could do a little spin interface, and it decides the loot you get, and then they brought out another update to essentially do a streamline of that, so it just tells you straight away what loot you get. But they didn't add a check, and I found this just before it got released in the game on that update. But I found out that if you have the streamline interface open and then just click the tick box to switch it back, close the interface, open it again, it would duplicate that loot. Because it wasn't clear in the inventory, it would just duplicate it, so you could just duplicate it as much as you wanted. So it was that was like oh wow, like this is pretty crazy.
We did have an internal Jira or Confluence page, I think, for like the most creative bugs found, and it was usually populated with hilarious typos, or just sort of weird graphical bugs. But I think the best bug I ever managed to do really was during the Ozan quest, I made Ozan moo like a pack yak. I turned Ozan into a pack yak. I also then, but at the same time, I also could make him meow like a cat, because the way the familiar code worked is it was all. I think they used like the Zanuck code, and Zanuck is like notorious for being broken. So that was an interesting one. But it was quite fun. Quite a lot of fun.
So obviously you mentioned exploits and stuff that came from that. You mentioned obviously one of them. Is there anything else that comes to mind that stands out from that?
I mean, when you're doing QA, you find an awful lot of bugs that aren't in the design brief. You find that some things don't work the way as they're intended, or you find that some bits of new content interact with existing content in the game in such a way which is not desirable. I think a good example of that would be in my mind, the most damaging bug that's ever hit RuneScape ever, which is the money pouch dupe, which most people call the Crucible, which has nothing to do with the Crucible, at all. I mean,
let's crush this myth then. Let's do it.
Oh, okay. This is a long story, but this is also an important story because most people consider like the party hat dupe to be the most like damaging dupe to have ever hit RuneScape ever. No, it is this money pouch bug. It was actually one of the most stressful 3 days of my life at Jagex, but also the most rewarding, because what Jagex did for me after that was fantastic. And I think the only time Jagex ever did this for me, and at the same time, it was a good recognition of all the effort put in to try and fix it. But I'll start by saying that, again, no discredit to the developer who made the money pouch, because the money pouch was at fault, but my God, this thing was badly done. And I'll also say how the QA team didn't find some of the exploits with the money pouch. You don't have to engineer anything for this. There is no excuse for this. But I think I tracked something like, and I have never released this number, so you get the first release. But I tracked as far back as I could track 16 trillion GP.
16 trillion GP.
Trillion, I believe that's 12 noughts. So I tracked 16 trillion from the money pouch dupe, but there was a lot more than that. That's as much as I could track. There were limitations that stopped me from finding the rest.
So, I mean, for this, as a story, we kind of have to go right back to the start. So, obviously, the money pouch will come out. When's the first time you see or are told, or did you come across this yourself, or did you see murmurings? How did you come across it?
Okay, the bug abuse community back in the day were very active, very vocal, and they loved harassing Jagex members of staff. They loved it. They felt empowered by the fact that they knew our full names. They doxed us to find where we lived, etc. And there was one guy on the QA team. You might have met him actually. He went by the name Chief, but his name was Ian Modholm.
Yeah, I didn't meet him, but I know of him.
Yeah, he'd been there for years. He's the nicest guy, lovely guy, and he was always the target because everyone knew him or knew of him or he knew them, etc. And they always targeted him. They'd always email him an address they thought was his, or they'd email him at work because they knew his Jagex email address would be like, "Hi Ian, blah 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 blah." They'd always harass him. And by this point, obviously, I'm the lead bug abuse curator, so it's my job to manage these players in game, as well as to work with them to find out how we can stop these exploits happening again in the future, etc. So that role had been passed down by person to person to person to eventually me. The person before me was Mod Crisso. Everybody knows him because he got the Rotten Potato pickpocketed him from Quint, who's in Hacks Unit, who I eventually spoke to, etc. So, you know,
the classic stealing creation pickpocket.
Yeah. So which kind of brought them to the forefront of attention because they managed to get hold of a dev item, which has no real value to players. Doesn't really do anything for them other than open their bank for them and complete all their quests. But that's by the by. I've really seen that by now. But no, the Chief once. I was actually working on the achievement system in RS. Well, this was before it was RS3. It was just obviously still one RuneScape at this point. And I was working on the achievement system. It was my job to just test the interface. And I remember Chief, who sat something like 2 desks in front of me, like 4 seats to the left, I think, because I was at the very back, called me over once and said, I got this email from. I'm not going to. If you're in the chat. You know who you are. I'm not going to give you the ego boost by saying your name because we still do talk, and I know bug users, at least at that time, loved the notoriety that came with being the guy to have found something or reported something. But he came over to me and said, "I got this email from X who says there's this player on player auctions selling 200 billion GP. Problem is, he keeps posting he's got a fresh 200 billion every day. The only way that's possible is with a dupe. Investigate." I'm like, well, I can't really I don't look after reward trading, so there's nothing I can do about this. I just send it to the reward trading guys, and if they find out who it is, they'll ban him. But there's nothing in here for me to indicate. Well, there's nothing in here to indicate to me that it's actually a dupe. And if there was, you're certainly not going to tell me about it because you're going to go and run and find it. So there's nothing I can really do here. I haven't got any names. I don't really have any tools really that can help me find it. So. You know, I'll just ignore the email, and we get tip-offs like that all the time. So it's nothing in there that lead me to believe it was genuine. And this is when we were testing. Crucible was also in testing at this time as well, for the record. So I wasn't working on Crucible. I was working on the achievement system, like I said, and Crucible was on a different team. I was given a day to break the Crucible, just a day, and I found a few exploits like bringing all the weapons, all the dangerous weapons outside, and if putting in security checks to say, oh, make sure these don't work in the duel arena if people do get them out, and through means that I found, and if they do get them out, make sure they're cleared, etc. So that sort of was my only real effort on the Crucible. So I didn't really have much more time than just a day to do all of that. My priority was on the weapons, obviously, and that went live and carried on. I think the next day, I think it was the day after the Crucible went live, I remember sitting at my desk testing the interface for the achievement system. And Ingo, who was the QA manager at the time, he'd taken over from Steve, came over and said, have you seen this video? It's like, what video? And then Mod Mark, Oggy, came over and said, are you talking about the video? And at the same time, an email came through saying, RS hotfix, players can no longer duplicate gold in the Crucible. I was like, okay, no, I haven't seen the video, but show me anyway. So I had a look at it. And it's done by a guy, I think he was called 2 College.
I think the video's still on YouTube, I'm pretty sure it is.
I'm pretty sure it is. And it showed him duplicating gold in the Crucible. And this video has already got 10,000 plus views at this point. And 10,000 views on a video isn't an awful lot, really, especially for a RuneScape video. But that's 10,000 people who've just seen how to exploit and duplicate gold. So that's a serious problem. So I'm looking at that thinking, oh, okay, that's pretty serious. But Eastie's fixed it already. And Mark and Ingo were saying to me, do you track down the gold and just move from the game and let us know who did it? Like, yeah, sure, I can do that. It's not a problem. So this is quite late in the day at this point. I think it must be like 3, so it's quite late. So I was starting to look into this bug, and I found that people that are doing it with the Crucible. And I'm going back through the system, and this is at the time where we had. This was the early days of the bot watch system. So it's got some basic functionality, and it allows us to understand and break down what happens in a player session and read player session data far more effectively. But it's not clean. As I'm reading through this, I can see people do, I can see all the Crucible bugs. I can see people doing all these exploits and also all these dupes in the Crucible. And at some point, I'm starting to read Duel Arena. And Jagex tools are notorious for not being fully updated. And a good example would be on the main portal page, you could look up the config name of an item so that you could give it to yourself in game. but the back end would be updated, I think, but the front end wouldn't. So if you search for an item, the back end would return it, but the front end would display something different. And it would always display dead dwarf remains. So if you search for an Armadyl God Sword, for example, has it just gone out, it will show you dead dwarf remains. So they were notorious for being out of date. So I was seeing Duel Arena, I was thinking, why is it showing Duel Arena? This is Crucible. And most people have gone home at this point, except Ash, who sits about 20 meters away from me, and Jackmob at the time, James. He was working with us. So he was in the office doing his own thing, and everybody's gone home, and it's just me at my desk trying to track all this gold. And I'm seeing Duel Arena, Duel Arena, Duel Arena, Duel Arena. And I'm thinking, this was a bug with the Crucible, though, wasn't it? So I go over to Ash and say to Ash, what was the bug? And Ash broke down the bug for me and explained it. At this point, I don't even know how the bug was, what even the bug was. I just knew there was one. And I knew what I was looking for in the player session data because I saw this video from 2 College, for example, so I could look up his player session data and I could identify the trends that would lead to the bug. So I search for this in the game, and I get all this information about where it's being done, and I see Crucible, 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 and eventually Crucible changed to Duel Arena. As I'm flicking through it, I'm just seeing more Duel Arena. So I speak to Ash, and Ash explains to me that actually this was a bug with the money pouch, not with the Crucible. So I remember saying to Ash, oh, would that work in the Duel Arena then? I remember Ash looking at me thinking, it might do, I think it would. I was like, well, can we test it? And Ash said, no, because the hotfix has gone live. We've done a cold fix as well, so all the local test servers have been updated with the fix. And I remember James, Jackmob, just by chance said, oh, by the way, I have a rented world that's from 2 days ago, so it's not going to have the change on it. So, okay, that's convenient. Can you just, Ash, go and test the Duel Arena for me with the reproduction steps that Ash has just explained? And I'm going to go back to the desk and just try and make sense of all this data information. And I remember as I'm looking through it, it's like Duel Arena, Duel Arena, Duel Arena, Duel Arena, Duel Arena. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. And then James comes running over going, it worked. I was like, oh, fuck, we got a big problem. And without going into detail of exactly how we track things or how Jagged track things, at the time we have a trade tool, which naturally which tracks every single trade in the game, obviously. And I'm looking at 2 players' names that are showing up on screen, and I look at the date and I think, this is a date before the Crucible went out. So this is the Duel Arena. Shit. How long has this been going on for? And then obviously, naturally, because obviously we're tracking every single trade in the game, we can't save all that trade information forever because the data would be enormous. So I'm looking at it thinking, I've got something like 200 pages here of trades, and I can see about 100 trades per page, and every single trade is max cash. We have a big problem. We have a really big problem. And you have to do the maths to quickly work out that the information I have on screen is about 16 trillion. It's like, oh fuck, we have a serious problem. I remember Ash coming over and saying to me something along the lines of, what are we going to do about this? There's nobody in the office, it's just me, Ash, and James. I mean, they're looking at it thinking, yeah, we got a real big problem. So at this point, I drafted an email to Mark, MMG, the CEO at the time, or COO at the time, his name was Dan Clough, I think, and a few other people. It's like, we have a big problem. This is what I've discovered. This is what's happened. These are the people that I found. What should we do about this? And this is at a time that, again, I'll preface this by saying this was at the time, this is not reflective of now, there was a sort of hiatus on banning players. We weren't allowed to ban anyone. Nobody was banned for anything unless it was like fraud or they were a gold farmer. So you could macro utilized content, you weren't going to get banned.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that.
I was like, oh shit, I can't ban anyone. I'm not allowed to ban anyone at all. What do I do with all this gold? I can't lock the accounts and comment them because player support have a habit of just not reading comments and then locking the accounts. So I can't do anything. What the fuck do I do? And James Jackmob, is in this weird position, which nobody else in the company really, except for the exec team, are in, which was he could do or say whatever the fuck he wanted and no one would stop him. No one would tell him otherwise. He would just come up and do something that everyone would say you're not allowed to do. He'd do it, and there's nothing they could do about it. So I remember saying to James, could you, I'm going to ban these 2 players here because these 2 names are showing up all over the place, and I'm going to comment it with saying, don't unban, speak to Dan and James, and hopefully with your name on it, people will think, okay, this must be serious. Because if I ban it, people are going to start asking questions of why I banned someone when I'm supposed to. And so we do. And it's already quite late, and I think there's nothing I can do this evening. There is nothing I can do this evening to fix this issue. I can't track the world right now because I don't really know how much time this is going to take, and I could be here till the morning. Best thing for me to do is just go home now, send this email, go home, and come back in the morning and just talk to the relevant stakeholders about what to do next. Morning comes round and I've got Mark at my desk, MMG, talking to me saying, what's happened? Why is this a problem? And what's the scale of it? I explain, obviously, 16 trillion GP duped into the game live. This is in the hands of gold farmers, most likely. People aren't going to hold on to this gold for a long time. I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just tell me what you need me to do.
So, I just want to really cool questions I've seen in the chat in relation to this. First of all, just for clarification, in case people aren't aware, when you say a rented world, what exactly do you mean? Just for people to understand.
Obviously we have internal test servers. There is no one test server. Anybody in the development team can rent a test server, and it will be their local world, and it would be local worlds drawn from a particular piece of development. How to explain this in a way people understand? So, but it's just a test world that you could rent, and it would be your test world. Other people could log into it, but it's your test world where you could test content, and then the person next to me could rent the same world, test the same piece of content. We wouldn't have to interact. It was just an easy way of us renting a world, testing content. Naturally, when there's a cold fix or there's a game update, all the test servers get updated at the same time so that they reflect the live state of the game, so that when you're testing content or testing bug reports, you're testing it in the same environment that players would see in the live game. James had a test server which was 2 days old because he'd frozen it so that it wouldn't close when there was a cold fix going out, which meant that it was an old revision of the game prior to any updates, which includes the fix to the money pouch, which is what caused the bug, which was discovered in the Crucible in Duel Arena. So when James went and tested the bug in the Duel Arena, he was doing so pre-fix.
Would it not be possible to revert that fix locally to test it?
Yeah, but at the same time, you can't guarantee you're not going to undo something else. For example, like Ash can see what Easty has done because Easty did the hot fix, and Ash could reverse it, but it's not authentic in the same sense that you're not testing in the same live environment that players were in when this happened. In some respects, you kind of want to test in that environment because it's the best way of really genuinely experiencing the same thing that people have experienced. So you understand how it works better that way.
Gotcha.
To that effect.
2 more questions that I've seen. So obviously you mentioned about Jack Mob, and essentially his name is next to yours. You're not going to get in trouble. Are you able to elaborate on why that is, or?
Obviously, everyone knows James's past. James owned RS Buddy. RS Buddy was probably the best bot that had ever existed for RuneScape. He was hired after a conversation with Mark at RuneFest 2011, and he came in to be a consultant and game engine developer, I think was his actual official job title, to just support with initiatives to prevent bots from coming into the game and to help out with different areas in technology. So basically help to update Jagex in some areas that they've been lacking because they just didn't have that level of experience. Either they couldn't find developers good enough who would want to accept that lower salary, or they just couldn't find people who had the technical know-how and the understanding of the game to really understand they just didn't really have anybody that could do that. So James came in sort of as like Mark's prodigy, effectively, and he almost had free reign to do whatever the hell he wanted. Whether he did or not was another matter. Whether or not everything he did ever made it back to Mark, I've got no idea. But for the most part, if I needed something done and the manager said, no, we're not doing that, I would say to James, can you make sure it gets done, please? And James would just make it happen. He opened an awful lot of doors for not just me, but a lot of other members on the QA team and everywhere else in Jagex by just getting shit done. He was very proactive with that.
So obviously you mentioned, a final question on this particular topic, you mentioned the 16 trillion number. If you were to have a guess of it's brutal to listen to as a number. Even now in RuneScape, like that's a crazy number, but even back then I can only imagine. If you were to look at it at an economy perspective, how much would that have been of the economy?
I don't think there's even a way of measuring how much gold is actually in the game. So I couldn't say it's 16 trillion was 10% of the entire overall game's GP. I have no idea. It just wasn't possible. There was a tool that we discovered existed that I didn't know existed at the time I was doing the investigation, which helped because, again, Jagex was famed for having tools that were very out of date and or broken at the time. So there was a tool which helped us track high-value trades, and that became invaluable in tracking most of this GP, which is what helped really verify that this is the value that we're working with here. If you're going to ask, if the next question was going to be how much GP do you think was duplicated in total, that bug had existed since the money pouch came out, and it was only made public to us 8 months later. So there is 8 months where this could have been 8 months. So this bug, I believe the money pouch came out in like December 2011, I think, and obviously we found out about it in July 2012.
Yeah, December 2011, spot on.
December, there you go. So it's whatever, 8 months, 9 months, I don't know what it is, something like that. So this bug had existed since the money pouch came out, and I can only go back in with the tools I have only so far. So I went back as far as I could and verified this is how much GP has been duplicated. There is this period of time, I'm not going to disclose how long the period of time is, but there is this period of time where we can't track it, where this could have been happening. And it's safe to say it was definitely happening, because there's no reason for as far back as I've gone to be the start. That's as far back as I can go. That's not when it started. That's just how far back I can go. So, but what's funny with that is obviously, you know, people talk about the economy and, you know, protecting the economy. 16 trillion GP went into the game and nothing changed. The game didn't change whatsoever. The only thing that changed was the real world value of gold, because gold farmers then, the value of gold plummeted. What changes the economy of the game is, you know, hearsay, conspiracy, and, you know, fear of missing out. If I was to say tomorrow, if I was to the developer now and saying tomorrow, oh, by the way, Rune Hasta P++ is getting an update, every, you know, motherfucker will go and buy a Hasta P++, which will send the price up. That's what affects the economy. 16 trillion GP went in and no one knew about it, really. They knew billions went into the game, but not how much. They knew billions went in. They didn't know trillions went in, and nothing ever happened. So
do you base it as the most impactful RuneScape bug based on the quantity of the value of stuff? Is that correct?
Based on the total value, I think if you were to take the party at dupe and convert that into today's GP value, or at least 2015's GP value, maybe that eclipses it, maybe. But as far as I'm concerned, that is the largest dupe, or the most damaging dupe that has ever existed within RuneScape, hands down. Hands down. And as a thank you, like I said, I was working on this for about 3 days, and I was given sign-off to ban only 200 accounts. I was only told ban 200 and no more. I thought
exactly 200.
No more than 200, I was told explicitly. This was coming from the then exec team. And I had Oggy on my side, who was just saying, do whatever you need to do, whatever time you need, just do whatever you need to do to get this sorted. And I removed as much gold as I could remove, because bearing in mind, most of this has made it to China at this point. And China aren't just going to sit on, if they've been given 1 trillion, they're not going to sit on it. They're going to disperse it, sell it, and get rid of it as fast as possible. They don't want to risk getting banned with having paid for $1 trillion's worth of gold and it disappearing. So I went through, I found the most prolific accounts, handed them to the copywriting team, who then wrote a news post, which is still up to date actually, of the most prolific accounts that have used this bug. That list isn't exhaustive, that's just the most prolific, which includes the 2 players who discovered the bug, who were doing it for a very long time. And also it included members of Hacks Unit, who were also the people that tipped us off. They discovered it after tipping us off about it and then just milked it dry. And you know who you are. Again, if you're watching, you know exactly who you are. I'm not going to give you the notoriety by saying your names, but you know who you are.
What are your thoughts on? So I actually quite liked the fact that the people who abused it had their names revealed, account names, that is. What are your thoughts on that as a general process?
That was, I remember Oggy saying, what should we do? And I was saying, well, I've got a list of names of the people that are doing it. And Oggy said, well, we're going to have to make a news post because this is very viral at this point. You know, Hacks Unit have released a video showing them abusing the bug. They've got, I don't know how many subscribers, but it goes viral pretty quickly. It goes all over social media. And I suppose you kind of worry about media outlets picking it up and journalists talking about, oh, this huge exploit that happened within RuneScape over this weekend with this new piece of update or this new piece of content. So I guess you worry about that. But I remember Ingo saying, actually, I think it was Ingo's idea. Ingo just said, well, let's just publish the names if you've got the names. I was like, well, I can give you the names. You obviously write the news post, you know, that's your job. Do that. And I think they went ahead and just published it. I'm all for it because it does show that we're being very transparent about what it is we're doing. I think, although it was not public knowledge that at the time we weren't banning people, it was very obvious that you could get away with macroing and you wouldn't get punished for it. So I think to make a statement to say we are taking a zero tolerance approach to rule breaking sort of really reverses negative community sentiment about your current position. And I think it did quite well because there were a few max players on that list. There were, I think one player had 200 millions stats, although he was hijacked. and the bug was committed on his account, but it was in hijacker's control for a significant amount of time. That it was fair enough to say that the original owner wasn't going to come back, so we're just going to ban the account. I wiped all the accounts. I think I was told to just destroy them. So not only So not only did we remove the gold, I removed all their stats as well. So they all have like 1 HP or 10 HP and 1 attack and everything, and wipe their banks just so that if they ever got accidentally granted back into the game, they would be worth nothing. So
yeah, the news post has just been put in the Twitch chat actually. So
yeah, I think it was I can't remember what it's called, like bug abuse bans or something.
Yeah,
like
but
that.
it just says bug abuse bans. It's literally a news post August 2012. Yeah, you were spot on the 200 million stats.
I vividly remember. I think I've just I've clicked it now as well. Yeah, 2 College. I've got the name correct as well. The 2 people who originally found the bug are in that list. I'm not going to say who they are, but it's nice. I mean, I pulled their names and I also pulled their total levels and their days played, because it's important to get an idea of, are these mule accounts, are these main accounts, who are they linked to, etc. So it's, you always get as much information as you can, but this was obviously published by the copywriting team on the authority of Oggy, and whatever exec signed it off. But I know I'm full for it. I think it's a good idea. I think we should sort of take an approach like that. I think it's nice to sort of go out and say, we recognise we made this mistake. We recognise that this has happened, and we recognise that players have taken advantage of it, and this is the steps we've taken to mitigate the damage and punish those responsible for making it as damaging as it even was. So I think that's fine.
So you mentioned about you've done all this. You alluded to at the start of this topic that Jagex actually did something for you, which is really awesome. Are you able to say what that was after this is over and done with?
Yeah, I got an email from SJ, who was Mark's PA at the time, saying your hotel has been booked in London. It's like, what hotel? And then I got an email from Ingo, I think, who was the QA manager at the time. I think it was Ingo. Who said, as a thank you for your efforts in dealing with this and coming in early, staying late, and the tracking you've done, we're sending you to the Eurogamer Expo in London. You and a friend for 3 days. We're going to give you, I think, £500 in spending money. Just thank you very much for embodying the sort of key philosophies that we have at Jagex of camaraderie and all these other cool adjectives. And actually, on reflection, it was quite nice, because whilst it was my job to sort of do that, I wouldn't say I went above and beyond for that reason. That was my job. It was nice to get that sort of level of praise, and I never really got that level of praise again after that. So even no matter what we did, I don't think really anybody did. But that was nice. It was just nice to get that. And I took. He now works at Jagex. He's Mod Ryan, I think. He didn't work at Jagex at the time. Yeah. I've known Ryan for years, long before I even worked at Jagex. So I took him with me, and we had a good time at Eurogamer.
Good. That's good. I think that's. I love that. Like, I'm a fan of like the time that like you do afterwards, and like the recognition for it. Like, it doesn't happen enough in like gaming industry and so on and so forth. So it's really, really good that happened.
It was empowering to some extent, because it just meant that, oh, okay, so all my efforts here haven't really just fallen on deaf ears. You haven't just expected me to do this and then as part of my job description and then walked away as to say, well, make sure this bug doesn't happen again. It was very grateful for it, obviously, because at this point, Jagex has never done that for me before, but I've never done anything, I never worked on anything that was so incredible. I never done anything or produced anything which was so insane that I was deserving of 3 days additional holiday, and a trip to Eurogamer with £500 spending money for me and a friend. So it was a very nice gesture. Still grateful for it to this day.
To answer that question, all I'm going to say is that I kind of covered it in the stream on the day I left about recognition and so on, but this is not my stream, so I'm not going to get into it in that regard. So we talked about Crucible. Anything else that stands out? Before old school, or
I think at that point what happened after that? I think there was a big review internally of how we approach testing content and how we mitigate things like that from ever making it into game. Because obviously at this point it was quite widely known from the breakdown and brief that I'd given people and the sort of post-mortem I'd done on the bug, that this is a bug that had existed for a very long time, and we were very late to fixing it. Admittedly, we were very late to finding out about it, but this should never have gone live in the first place. And there were a whole other load of issues with the money pouch. This wasn't just the first time. This wasn't the first money pouch dupe that existed in game. There was another one that was discovered on the day of release, which should never have made it live, ever. But it did sort of give the team a sort of wake-up call that there were a lot more eyes now looking at them when it came to testing content and content being a lot cleaner and crisper when going live. I was asked to give feedback about what we could do to improve the QA team to make sure things like this didn't happen again. The only thing I could really suggest was something that Ash had taught me, which was learn to code review. And we're not expecting the QA team to take over from the development team, because the development team do their own code review. If a different developer code reviews the main developer's work, but the QA team should have a good idea of what key things to look for in the code itself to and feed that back to developers if they have any thoughts about it. A good example would be everyone knows what stalling is in game. I think pretty much everyone knows what stall is. And there are certain cues in game that when you stall, they have very undesirable effects. If you were to leave area A with QA on you, QA should not then execute in area B because you get unintended effects. So naturally, you should make sure that QA is removed when you enter area B. Some developers were just very naive in thinking that players will never get into this state. They will never find a way of going from here to there with X, Y, Z queue on them. It was a naivety thing because a lot of developers just didn't play RuneScape so intently, or they were just very naive in thinking that people wouldn't exploit this content. We don't have those type of players, which of course we do. But they were quite disconnected from the community, so they just didn't really understand what sort of community we had and what the black market community was like. So it was one of the things I fed back was we need QA testers to be able to read code.
Yes.
A lot of QA testers were very resistant to that. Like, no, I want to stick to what I know. I know how to do this. I'm only going to do this. It's like, you're a fucking dinosaur. If you don't adapt and innovate and evolve, you're going to go extinct. So.
Just to add to people in the chat, no, my wife's not free ticking on old school or anything. She's actually well invested in her Stardew Valley adventures, so much so that her headphones are in and she's just in the zone. That's the clicking you may be hearing. So yes, just enjoy it. I think it's funny. So talk to me about. So were you, just for historical purposes, old school was coming around? Did you know straight up there and then you were going straight to old school?
No. Okay. I'm going to jump back further because I know what you're going to say.
Okay.
When I joined Jagex had literally, this was in 2010, so I'm jumping back a fair bit here, 3 years actually. There was an internal forum, which you might have seen or used, for people to buy and sell junk that they're looking to sell or to have.
Buy, sell, trade, yeah.
Yeah, there was actually, the best thread on there was bad parkers in the car park, which just take pictures of some moron who parked over 3 bays or fucking crashed into you or whatever. So that was the best thread. But there was also a thread called like game update suggestions, and when I joined, I remember typing in there, why don't we get, I didn't call them old school servers, but why don't we get like nostalgia 2006 servers? And another member of the player support team was like, yeah, we need 2006 servers. It'll be fucking brilliant if we get to play the old version of the game again. And a load of Jagex staff come back with going, who let the troll out the rants for him? This is never happening. And it's like, oh,
impression.
Yeah, and it's just you know what they're going to be like.
Yes,
yes. There were a lot of people. That thread might still be up right now. So if there are any Jagex people watching at the moment, I imagine
the intranet was killed a long time
ago.
Really? Yeah, so I mean, if it's there, it's probably in some buried file somewhere. If you want to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. Well, fair enough. But either way, there was this thread, and I remember in 2010 we should have retro servers. I can't remember what the quest is called. It's the one where you kill Guthix. Is it the World Wakes?
I think it's World Wakes, I believe.
I always get confused between World Wakes or Guthix Sleeps. It was World Wakes, I think, which was being done by Anna. And I was tasked
Wild Guthix Sleeps, sorry. Go ahead.
Wild Guthix Sleeps. Oh, it's one of those two. I don't know which one it is. It's the one where Guthix dies. That was going live, I think, a week from the day that, or the week after that we're in at the moment. And I was just asked to try and break the content, basically, try and find something wrong with it. And I'm not having a good time because Anna is a very, very good developer. Anna doesn't make very many mistakes. So you're going through it and you're shooting blanks, basically, nothing's working. well, everything's working as intended, nothing's breaking. So I remember seeing sort of stars basically and getting quite bored. And an email comes through from Phil Bilby, Mod Phil, who's the head of engine at the time, saying there is a version of the 2007 RuneScape available in the rental world. Select Oldscape to rent it and just run around, enjoy it. Something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. I remember seeing it like, holy fuck, this is brilliant. So I logged in straight away because I've got some free time. I'm not like scoring anything here on Quest, whatever it's called. I think someone said World Wakes, so World Wakes out of it. That's the one. I'm pretty sure it is that anyway. And I'm logging in, and I've logged in, and it's old school RuneScape. It's old school RuneScape. This is what I, as a RuneScape player, had played and have wanted to play for such a long time, because since that revision, we have done really shit content. Dungeoneering is the best bit of content I think RuneScape's ever had. But, you know, everything from between 2007 to 2013, I think, really fucking awful. At least in my opinion. So it was nice to sort of log in and get that nostalgia kick. It was like, oh my God, like literally, it was brilliant. And I remember thinking, this is fantastic. I love this. And there's nobody else around me who's getting immersed in this. No one is looking at it going, oh, we're playing it. Everyone's just working on the World Wakes quest. It's like, this is fantastic. I love this, but nobody else is interested. And then an email came round from I think it was Ingo again, saying, does anybody want to work on this? And I remember replying straight away, I want this. I want this right now. I want this. And I think maybe like half an hour later, as I'm messing around on Tutorial Island, I get pulled into a meeting room with Ingo and Ash. And Ingo says to Ash and I, and bear in mind, it's about 4 p.m. on like a Wednesday. I'm pretty sure it was a Wednesday because it was like 2 days, but it's 4 p.m. on a Wednesday. And Ingo says to Ash and I, right, Mark wants this to go live on Friday. You two have expressed interest in working on this. You need to get this game ready for launch for Friday.
And what day was this?
We're late afternoon on Wednesday. And Ash and I look at each other and think, you want this game to be ready for Friday? Friday? Do we even know what version of the game we have? Like, we know it's an old version of RuneScape. What year is it from? What content updates are in it? What bugs are in it? We don't know. I don't know what's in it. So Ingo just said, you've both been pulled off active projects. Get this sorted. Get it live. Anything you need, let us know and we'll get it for you. And Ash and I looked at each other, and you could tell both of us are saying, we need is time, but we have a limited amount of time. You can't give us much more time. So, you know, this is all we've got. So Ash and I go back to our desks and we have a chat. And I think Ash and I agree that the best thing for us to do at this point is to work out what version of the game we've got. So I think Ash goes and Ash talks to Phil about what version of the game Phil's pulled. Or I sit there and I just try and work out what's the best way of approaching this. Fortunately, we have an internal bug reporting system called the PMS, I think, which had been replaced by Jira, but the PMS was still active, and it was basically a library of all bugs that had ever been reported from like 2001 to 2011, I think. So that was a good starting point. I remember Ash coming back over and saying to me, "It's a version pre-God Wars. What I've done is I've created a stream where I've removed all content that was at the time in development, and the version of the game that is there now that we have is the version that we will put live once we do what we need to do to it." So Ash had pulled out, I think, God Wars, Summoning, and I think there was another piece of content. There was like a Goblin quest, I think, that was in there as well. So that's what we had. Ash had found out what we needed. Ash had got us a world that we needed to test, and I had looked up all the tools that I needed. Or I looked up the first tool that I had access to, which would help us test this game. And this is, again, Wednesday evening. At this point, Ash and I think there's no point in us doing anything tonight, really, because we don't really have much resource. I don't think we can even do it just between the two of us. The next morning we come in, and his name's Paul, but Mod Nexus said he was going to help us out. And I remember having a meeting with Ingo saying, look, there's a lot more here than I can test myself. I'm a QA tester. I've got 2 developers working on this as well. They're going to go through and code review everything, but I'm going to go through and QA test as much as I can. I'm going to funnel test everything to make sure there's no roadblocks on day one. From, in Tutorial Island, there's gates example, which only opens to one person. That's not a problem normally, but Tutorial Island has never seen, 300,000 people go through it at the same time. So we need to remove roadblocks like that so people can actually get into the game. I'm going to need help. I think Ingo then goes and has a chat with like the directors, the production directors, and Ingo comes over and says, we're delaying the World Awakes quest by a week. So you have the whole QA team to help you test this. It's like, okay, that's good. That's brilliant. That's a good start. So effectively, this is just like any other QA project, except that we just have a very small amount of time. I'm just going to tell people to go through the PMS system and test all the bugs active between the 2006 and 2007, I think it was, in the PMS system, to just test it. At the same time, I'm going to reach out to all old bug abusers that were around at the time to ask them if they want to submit any ideas to us about bugs they might have abused at the time, and if they do, we'll give them free membership, for example. That was an idea given to me by the head of anti-cheating at the time. He said, well, if you offer them free membership, maybe they'll help you out. One or two of them did, and we gave them, it wasn't lifetime, but we must have given them a year or something for suggesting bugs that they knew about at the time that maybe we hadn't recorded, that we then went and verified and fixed. And we went through YouTube videos, we went through like Rune HQ forums, Tippet forums, every online resource we could find, we went through to try and find bugs that were probably active at the time that this particular version of the game was around, to try and get it ready. And we worked, I don't think we left that office until nearly 1 a.m. So we'd come in the morning, and Ash, and at this point, so Matt has been introduced to us. Matt, I remember while we were testing, Matt had come over, and Matt said, I'm on the Ozgool team now as well. Michelle, who was the copywriter, is also on the team. She is doing all our news posts, and Matt said to us, do you guys want Twitter accounts? Because we have Twitter accounts in a third-party publishing team. We can probably get you some Twitter accounts so you can interact with the community if you want some. And Matt would look after sort of the more public-facing communication that was going on around Old School RuneScape, while Ash, Paul, and I worked on, getting the production and getting the game ready. I honestly, we must have come in at 7 a.m. and went home at 1 a.m. and exhausted. And even on Friday when we came in, and knowing the game is going live later on today, there's this huge community sort of sentiment around this, because this has gone public. There's a poll on the forums. I think his name was SoRect, had done a video, which is what prompted Mark to tell Phil to get a version of this game live. So I think you can probably credit SoRect with why Old School even exists in the first place, because I think if he hadn't done that video, Mark wouldn't have looked at it and thought, yeah, we're going to do this, speak to Phil, make it happen. I remember having a cracking headache from just racking your brains about what could possibly go wrong on day one. And I remember saying to Ash and Paul, is there any content we should really lock off, because we just can't guarantee it's going to be safe for release? So we put down, I think Barb Assault we locked on launch, and we locked, I think, the Zanuck quest. I can't remember what the Zanuck quest is called.
I saw someone say construction was locked as well. Was construction locked down?
I don't think it was. It might have been. I can't remember if it was. It could well have been. But we locked off some areas in the game.
People have said Player House, Death to Dorkashin, Soulsbane, Castle Wars, and Slug Menace. That's the list.
We definitely didn't log off Slug Menace and Castle Wars, because Slug Menace was patched in 2008, or 2000. I can't remember. We didn't log off Slug Menace. I know that was notoriously broken, but we didn't log that off because that was fine. I don't think we locked off Castle Wars. We might have locked off Player House. We definitely locked off Death to the Dorkashin. Thank you for whoever suggested that. Because Zanuck was a problem, and it was a bug abuse problem, and it had a number of issues in it, which, other than just smuggling Zanuck out and walking around with Zanuck following you, there were other load of issues in there that we just didn't want to be visible to the public on day one, or even the first week. If we've been tasked with getting this ready for launch, there's a huge media spotlight on this old version of RuneScape coming back. I don't think anybody at really this point had even done retro games. Nobody had revived an old version of their game. I think Old School might have been the first. I don't know if Halo 1 had done it at that point.
No, they
anniversary.
haven't. No, I think the anniversary came in like 2014, 2015, I think, for Halo.
Oh, possibly. So, I mean, there was a huge media presence on it. There was a poll, obviously, to vote for what level of support RuneScape with Old School was going to get. So we just did not want there to be any damage, sort of visible bugs, even graphical bugs, which are harmless, but we didn't want them because we just didn't want to have that visibility. And then they're coming down on us. So we locked off a load of content. Player House maybe one. We definitely locked off Death of the Dorgish, and we definitely locked off Barb Assault. And yeah, the content went live, and it was an enormous success on release. We just saw a huge number of players come into it because obviously the nostalgia of playing this old version of the game is obviously meaningful to so many people. We saw influence it. We saw Soldier Boy tweeting about it on Twitter saying, "Oh my God, he's going to go play it." So with that level of publicity, we can't afford to have any real any visible bugs. So we were nervously racking our brains about what was going to go through. And I sent an entire development team-wide email, which invited the entire floor to come and play the game to stress test it, because obviously we want to make sure people can get through Tutorial Island. We did everything we could, and it went out, and we expected to return to our previous jobs maybe 6 months later. I had argued with Ingo to give me a written confirmation, an email, that when Old School dies, or if Old School dies, I could return back to the RS3 team and carry on my old job, and everything would be fine. I think Ash tried to get one from his manager, and he was never given one.
Wow.
So I remember saying this actually. I don't think he'll mind me saying it because I think Ash has alluded to it many, many times before, especially on Twitter. But Ash really was not happy at Jagex at the time. He was not happy at all. I think he actually said to me at one point, "I don't even want to make my 10-year anniversary, but Old School is what's kept Ash at Jagex." And I mean, Ash has been there for what, like 15, 16 years now, maybe?
Yeah, he hits his 15 years very recently.
Yeah, so and Old School has kept Ash for an additional 5 years. That's what this is a man who was ready to leave because he just did not feel valued. He did not feel like his work was going anywhere. He did not feel like he was adding value to anything. And then Old School came along and it gave him a new platform to be or carry on being as awesome as he is.
Just a quick sidetrack, actually, just to deviate a second, just for you all. I am looking to find a time to talk to Ash on one of these kind of streams.
That'll be good.
Which obviously, yeah, it should be an absolute blast. I don't have a date locked yet, but yeah, me and Ash are going to try and see if we can sort some time so we can have one of these streams and just chat. It'll be Ash chatting and a lot of stories, I'm sure, but yeah, we're going to just talk a lot.
Ash is a walking encyclopedia.
Yes.
He is the RuneScape Wikipedia. There is nothing that man hasn't seen, worked on, at some point dabbled with, or doesn't know about. I had a Twitter exchange with Ash maybe like 2 months ago about doing a stream similar to this, where we talked about our rapport and our collaboration and the stuff we worked on and the stuff we did. So if you could get Ash, that'd be fantastic, because Ash has stories. He has stories.
The only thing I'm waiting on is Jagex, because Ash doesn't have stuff at home to do these kind of things, because obviously Ash likes to keep that all to work, which is fair. So I'm trying to see if I can sort out a time so I can go and talk to Ash in the computers at the streaming room at Jagex, but I still haven't had a reply back in about a week plus now, so I'm still waiting. We'll get there in the end, and I'll figure out a day and a time. Ash is very flexible, but it's just about getting permission from Jagex, so hopefully soon. We'll see.
Well, I know they did do a storytelling stream.
Oh, yeah, we did the anniversary stream, I remember that.
Yeah.
And that was good fun. There was some really good stuff that came from that, but I mean, just putting Ash on his own and just letting him talk about his adventure, I can only imagine what it will be like. It'd be crazy.
Yeah, I think Ash unplugged would be the dream for any interview, really, because when he's not bound by, he obviously still works at Jagex, so he might worry about whether or not something he's saying might contravene some policy somewhere. I don't know, but if you could get an unplugged version of an Ash interview, that would be fantastic. I'd tune in, because there would be things there that, obviously I've worked with Ash almost the entire time I was at Jagex. We worked together on a lot of things. In fact, pretty much every project that I worked on, Ash had a hand in. And if Ash requested somebody to work on something, he usually requested me. So he's still probably the best person I've ever worked with. and it's one of the reasons I actually miss working on the team still now. It's Ash and I had a good rapport. I understood Ash very well. I knew what to say, what not to say, how to say it, the best way of approaching certain subjects, etc. He is a gem for that game.
Yeah. The plan will be. I mean, I don't feel it'll be unplugged, but I kind of want to send everything I want to ask Ash, obviously, to not surprise him, because I think that's like same with you, of course. Because I think the best way to approach these is, to show the respect to the person coming on, to take their time to at least prepare them for and make sure they're okay with what they're talking about. So, that's the plan. Hopefully with Ash, but we'll see. And of course, I'll open up a question thread if that happens. But we talked about obviously the creation of Old School. So early days, you mentioned the same thing that Matt did, which was didn't think the game was going to last 6 months. Why?
Yeah. Obviously, no one had really done this before. So, I mean, how long does nostalgia last for? I mean, there's been plenty of times, various things in life where you might visit an area you haven't, the world you haven't been to in an awful long time, and then you just leave, or you visit memories that you've got of something quite pleasant, and then you move on. You don't live in that moment. You sort of move on. Time moves on. So we were fully under the impression that the nostalgic kick, which has shot this game to 700,000 daily active players, which was a lot for Jagex at the time. We thought that was just going to dwindle down, and it was. I mean, you could see it. I think there's a website called Misplaced Items, which tracks that. It tracks it very accurately, very, very accurately. And you could see that it was a huge drop, and we were expecting that to happen, and none of us were under the impression that this was going to last forever, because there's a modern version of RuneScape still in development, and it's I think at this point it is RuneScape 3, and it does have AOC, so maybe the combat system in this game has some, I'm not going to say longevity, but it's got a good enough lifespan to see us through to at least 6 months. But 6 months comes around, and we've got a steady player base. I think the line has plateaued at this point, really, and it's not plateaued. Sorry, it's flatlined at this point, and we've got, I don't know what the graph says. So I'm going to just hazard a number for the sake of saying so. Maybe 40k active players, or concurrent players, which is good. And we thought, well, this is pretty damn good. What do we do at this point, really? At this point, all we've done is small quality of life updates to just make the game a bit more tolerable, because it's very janky. And a lot of the modern updates, or a lot of some of the updates that have gone into RuneScape, which were quite popular, like CraftX or I can't think of anything now off the top of my head. You put on the spot, you can't think of it. But a lot of basic quality of life stuff just wasn't in the game, and a lot of people had gotten so used to that in the main RuneScape.
Oh, tool belts and stuff like that, right?
Things like that. Yeah, I don't think you might not have done a tool belt. I've got no idea. I can't remember. But things like that, some basic quality of life stuff like that just wasn't in the game that people wanted. We thought, well, there's no harm in us putting that in the game, because it's not as though that's going to lead to us putting Karossi and the sword in the game, is it? Making the tool belt isn't going to suddenly lead to a sword that can two-hit you. So, we just started doing things like that. And again, we didn't see a decline in players. We didn't really see a rise either, but we saw a steady player base. So I think, given that the community had voted for a small development team that would work on the game, Matt took Ash and I to Matt had booked an off-site meeting at the Doubletree Hilton, I think, in Cambridge. I think it was Doubletree Hilton, but it's the one on Downing Street. And he booked out a conference room where we were going to sit down and we were going to talk about what the future for this game is going to be, and what we think we should do to make it a standalone product. And I remember we sat down and we talked about, okay, well, we're going to stick to the sort of community-driven, community-voted content. We're going to propose new content that's probably built from existing updates, but we're going to change what the community wanted changing that never got changed. So if Nightmare Zone, for example, is basically a Dominion Tower, but it's got different features that people originally requested that were never put into the game. So we're going to copy what was done, but reverse the decisions behind why it was done. So we outlined the plan to just update the game continuously until it dies, or until we see reason to just update the game continuously and see what happens. So that's when we started polling not so much quality of life updates, but more content updates. So new things that the game might not have ever had, or RuneScape has never seen, or so I think Nightmare Zone was the first piece of original, as you could say original loosely, because obviously it's effectively a remake of Dominion Tower, but that's the first piece of original content that existed within Old School. Obviously, we polled that. We polled what the name would be as well. We gave players that much responsibility over what was going to go into the game, because we really wanted to embody this idea that this game was community driven. It was you decide what goes in the game. If you don't want it, it's not there. So after that offsite meeting, I think we just pretty much discovered that, or decided, that we were going to continuously update this game until whenever, really, whatever happens. We'll just go with the flow. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. One thing Matt said in his stream, because I did watch Matt's stream, which is very true, is we had nobody was looking over us. Nobody was looking over us at all. So where there are, and as you probably are aware, there were quite strict rules about what you can do in game on your JMod account, and what you should say, what you shouldn't say, what you should do with content, what you shouldn't do with content. We had complete free reign to do whatever the fuck we wanted, whatever we wanted.
Do you think that was a massive benefit to Old School?
Oh, absolutely, because I mean, you can't have a community with all these we can't have a game the size of RuneScape and have no community interaction. You can't have players who are so immersed and so passionate about this game and then close the door on them and just be invisible. You can't. It's just it blows. It's not possible. It's stupid. So we took full advantage of being able to go in game and be like, I've just killed you. I've turned into an abyssal whip while you're killing an Abbey demon, and you think you've got a whip drop and it's just me. We're going to go to KBD and transmog into the KBD head, so you scream on stream to streamers thinking that you just got KBD head, but it's Mod Reach, who's level 1. It's things like that sort of make you look human, and we're all human. We yes, we're developers of the game you really love, but we're all human as well. We like to have a laugh, we like banter, it's all good. So it was very popular, and we saw an enormous increase. I mean, you only had to look at, I don't know if you ever saw them, because you were certainly on them, but there was an internal email that went round talking about the people's Twitter accounts and who had the most impressions.
Right.
That
week. I remember this. And holy hell!
Who had which Jagex Twitter account had the most followers and who had the most impressions? And we were always number one. It was Ash. It was usually always Ash number one. Then it was me number two, and then it was usually like you number. It was usually like me and you rotating between 2 and 3.
I wasn't even on RuneScape. At the time, I was on a completely different game. So
not even me. It was like you, me, and Matt. Sorry, but we were rotating between 1, 2, and 3. We were constantly at the top, and all these RuneScape 3 devs were at the bottom because they would tweet about stuff that was mundane. It was like, I've just updated this NPC. What do you think of his chat dialogue? No one gives a fuck. People want to see you tweet about human things, tweet about a bug you found, or tweet about, engaging the community in a way that, they can respond to, that's going to be implemented into the game. Do something interesting.
For me,
which is what we did.
Like for me, the difference I saw back then was like I saw and I looked at the tweets, and I was curious. Like these emails I actually thought were quite useful in showing me. Oh, you go on. You're gonna. I saw you pointing.
I just saw Ronan. Hi, Ronan. It's been a while since we've spoken in the chat. Saying, sorry to interject. Sorry.
That's fine.
Ronan said, I don't recall one time Ash even lost one of those emails. Ash did lose once. Oh, actually, no. I think Ash maybe lost 2 or 3 times.
I think he lost 2 or 3. I took one. I took one, and I hold that to my heart.
I definitely took one, and it was the one where I tweeted an image of me mounted on a KBD walking around the barrel. But Ash lost to Nathan, who was Mod Infinity, who tweeted Gordon Ramsay a picture of a dinner, and Gordon Ramsay had replied to it saying that's fucking terrible. And he'd shot to rank 1 because obviously all the impressions you get from a Gordon Ramsay reply sends you to number 1 on his high score. So on the internal Twitter impressions high scores, Ash had only lost first place 3 times ever. Otherwise, it was the time it was always Ash, Ash, Ash. Sometimes me, sometimes you, sometimes Matt. Ash, 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 Ash.
It would still be Ash. He's just past 90,000 followers on Twitter. It's ridiculous.
The thing to take away from that was the top 5 was all the Old School team, and I mean, we had no oversight onto us about what we were doing in game, but all management could see what we were tweeting. If anybody was unhappy with what we were tweeting, they could tell us, and no one ever did. So why other members of the development team didn't emulate that just blows my mind. I mean, I get it. If you're not big on social media, if you don't understand the community, if you're not familiar with some of the nuances of, what makes an engaging post, then fine, so be it. Not everyone's so clued up on social media.
I think I can tell you why, like from personal experience, like of what I saw anyway. So like when I look at the time when the scores are coming out, I always look to see like what are you guys doing versus RuneScape, and it becomes the thing is that your guys will always do, in a way, not intentionally, sometimes memes, but also very media-esque tweets. It's not just plain text tweeting, it's tweets with media images, it's tweets with GIFs, it's tweets with videos, but there's also that core engagement and consistent engagement with players. Whereas on RuneScape, it was different because it was a lot more guarded, and like you've got to be careful about what you're saying. And this falls into the whole management weren't really watching what Old School said, which is what you and Matt have said, and this kind of just demonstrates that perfect example of how you can benefit from that to an extent.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think another reason a lot of our tweets were quite successful, and I in particular got told off for this quite a lot. But we did bait the RS3 team and RuneScape 3 quite a lot. We did compare how successful Old School was compared to how successful RuneScape 3 was. This is a team with 150 developers on it. 100. This is not 150 developers. Sorry, it's a development team inclusive of QA testers, our graphics artists, etc. There's 150 of them, and there's 3 of us in this corner with a game which has got more players than yours. We're constantly baiting them, and to us it's banter because we did mean it, but at the same time we wouldn't care if shots were fired back in our way because it's good to have that rapport, and if it can be done in a light-hearted way where we're not going to take offense to what you say to us. Obviously, I mean, yes, we're working on an old version of the game. You're working on a shiny new one. There were some developers who thought, why would I want to work on an old version of the game? Well, because the content you're making is shit. You have 1,300 followers and you've had Twitter for 2 years. I've had Twitter for 2 years and got 18k. I mean, it's like comparing apples and apples. It's so like, it's quite obvious. I don't care if you want to throw shots my way. I'm not going to take offense to it. It's quite nice to have that rapport. But if you clearly want to take offense to everything I'm going to say,
there's a very famous Twitter thread exchange between the two corporate accounts of RuneScape and Old School. I think Ronan was involved in this one actually, where I can't remember what the occasion was, but the idea was that these two accounts would engage in playful banter with each other. But the Old School banter was basically along the lines of, we have more players than you, which internally I can tell you from the moment it happened, when I looked over and I saw it popping up on people's screens and I could just see boiling red faces, like it got like to that point, and I was like, boy, here we go.
See, I can understand why people would be quite upset about us, parading our success in people's faces. Yeah, I get that. Fair enough. But at the same time, we've all got one common goal. We all work for the same company. We're all, the success of RuneScape, main RuneScape, affects our employment. The success of our game affects your employment. Let's all just try and make a successful game and have fun while doing it. I'm not taking shots at, at least not publicly, taking direct shots at what it is you do, who you are, how good you are at what it is you do. It's just throw shots, throw shade back at me. It's fine. Matt had sort of had quite a few conversations with me about toning down how much you sort of mention this. I think Ash occasionally may have said things once or twice where Matt had to sort of say, again, tone it down slightly because we're getting a few complaints. And we did get quite a lot of complaints about how vocal we were, because we were in a corner at that point. We were next to the web QA team, so we were actually
you were on the second floor. Yeah. I remember, like I think I said,
segregated.
You were in like this tiny little corner. That so if you go around this corner, so imagine actually this is them right here, like this is their little area. That is the Old School team. That's it. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, we were very segregated from the main development team. I mean, the closest member of the team was maybe like Matt, and only by, he was close to the engine team, I think, who was then behind the tech team, who was then behind. So there was like 3 teams from the main development team before we even reached us. We were very segregated, and I'm not a quiet person. I'm quite loud. I speak very clearly. And again, one of my faults is I often think before I speak before I think. And the amount of times I would say something, or I'd read a tweet and I'd say something out loud, and that would be heard by the members of the development team. And credit, I mean, fair enough. I shouldn't have probably said it so loud, or I probably shouldn't have said it at all. I should have said it in, amongst ourselves privately, or DM it or something. But there was a lot of sort of, I wouldn't really call it animosity, but there was a lot of angst between the RS3 team at the time and us. But we only have to look at this, like the Twitter high scores, to see who was engaging with their community better. And we wanted, everybody should emulate that. Everybody should look at what we were doing or what sort of posted Ash was doing. Ash responds to every single fucking tweet he gets, even if it's "I've been banned, can you help me? I'm not the person to speak to. Please follow this link to submit an appeal to the account support team." Ash has no reason to say that at all. There's literally no reason for Ash to say that. I mean, that's not his job. Players should know that he doesn't deal with that. There is a verified Twitter Jagex support account, but Ash takes his time to reply to all those tweets. In fairness, I didn't bother because I was only really interested in replying to people who were curious about old school RuneScape or submitting development ideas or memeing with, influencers or even just shading or throwing shade at the RS3 team.
He's got 235,000 tweets. Like
that is ridiculous.
It's insane.
That is ridiculous. And if you look at those, I think more than half of those are going to be, please submit a ticket following this link.
Yeah,
Ash takes his time to engage with his community. He is not a social media manager. He is not a community manager. He is a principal developer.
And that is why he's so good on Twitter, because he isn't taught in the ways of this is what you have to stick to when replying to people and so on. He is himself, and that is what people resonate with.
Exactly. You can't be a corporate robot. You can't sit there with your RuneScape avatar of a piece of content you made, which I understand you're proud of, but you can't sit there with a RuneScape avatar and say, "Oh, what do you think of the latest quest that I just released? Isn't it good?" And then nothing else. It's only going to be RuneScape related. I tweeted pictures of myself playing Halo. Ash tweeted pictures of kebabs he bought. Matt tweeted pictures of him working on his, I don't know if it's his dad or it's his uncle or somebody, but he's got like a kit car Lamborghini project, and Matt would tweet pictures about that. It just showed that we were human and that we also had a life outside of RuneScape, and that we liked sharing it with people because it really engaged with them and it gave them a good impression of us, and it made them want to talk to us because it showed that we were approachable, which is what we focused the game on. We're an approachable bunch of developers who want to engage with our community because our game is community driven. All the content goes in, it's voted by the community. We are very transparent about what our development process is like, what stage of the development we are at, where we can involve you in the development. We're very transparent about that, and that was fantastic. And I think that contributed to a large part of why RuneScape or old school RuneScape became as successful as it was, because an awful lot of that is still carried on today.
Agreed. I mean, I think the formula was set back then, and I think that's the formula that it needs to be. That is what it made OS, and also for that extent Jagex's outreach so much more. I mean, the high scores proved it, right? That's just the way it is. I stand by that. So we talked about, obviously, the early days of old school, some of the stories. Do you want to talk about how you ended up becoming a content developer for old school?
Yeah. I think this was after the first PDC, the player designed content player design something like that, player design content competition, something like that. Which some of us on the team had some complaints about because we didn't get to review the content submissions.
Dan, sorry, can I just hold on? I just need to turn the cameras off. My wife needs to go pee, so she needs to rub out the cameras a bit. Bear with me a second. Hold on.
That's fine.
Go. It's not on the thing. You can go. There we go. The things you do for your wife, bless her. She's been. I've just realised because I've been so involved in interviews. She's been looking at me. She just passed me a phone with a text saying, "I really need a piss." So I feel bad. I basically kept it hostage in a sense so you could go pee. Anyway, sorry. Talk about content development. How you got in that?
So I think some of us on the team were quite annoyed with the way it was being managed because, we all have a creative insight and creative contribution to the game. And the player design competition is a fantastic idea. It's a really good idea. It gives players a chance to really embrace their creative side, and it gives them a chance to really think about. We've given them a basic brief of what you should describe to us, how you should describe it, how things should work. So we're really exposing what we look for in valuable design, engaging design, how you want this content to engage your players, etc., and what is it going to achieve, what's the core objective of it, or how they're going to contribute to the success of the game, etc. So we've given the players a really good brief, and that's fantastic. And we all wanted to get involved. And then obviously we were told, this is what's won. And I remember Ash and I looked at it and thought, this is good, but we'd like to have seen all the other submissions. We'd like to have at least voted on what was going to go in. But hey ho, if it's rooftop agility, then so be it. It's a good idea. And at the time, I had started getting a little bit frustrated at Jagex. Not so much with old school RuneScape, but just Jagex, or at least the RuneScape studio. There was a lot of things going on that I didn't agree with. And a lot of things, I think we as a team were not being recognized properly. We as a team were not being recognized properly. And I think we all had, Matt had the hardest job of everybody, because Matt's job was to play the diplomat. And Matt's job was to relay information to us from management and then relay our feedback back to management, and so be it. So Matt had the sort of middle ground job. Hard job, and credit to Matt for doing it as diplomatically as he did. But I wasn't so happy with Jagex at the time, and I was very frustrated. And we were working on the rooftop agility course. And bearing in mind we had no support. There was no support on our team whatsoever. We had me, Ash, Paul, Matt. So we had 2 developers, 1 QA tester. And Ash and Paul obviously had to QA their own content because self-QAing is important. And I, at the same time, had to do some basic graphics work. We all had to be jack of all trades because we just had no support. And I saw Ash doing some of the rooftop agility courses, and I thought, well, why not make this easier? Why not I just have a go at trying to do some? Because, I can read RuneScript. I've been advocating that QA testers should code review, so I have a rough enough understanding of the logic flow and how it works to really create content. And seeing Ash do it, I mean, Ash is the best mentor you could ever hope for. So I started building some of the content, but at the same time, I'm still getting frustrated with some things at Jagex. And Matt, bless him, Matt was actually the reason I moved to a content developer position, because I had expressed so much frustration with what was going on, with how the team was being viewed, with how I was being valued, not by Matt, not by the QA, not by the old school team, but just by Jagex and my team, etc. I was getting so frustrated with the QA team trying to pull me off old school to work on some RS3 stuff, because I was still a member of the QA team, not the old school team. Therefore, I was still required to do bug queues on RS3, etc. And I'm getting really frustrated with people who just cannot appreciate that we've got some success over here and you're trying to downplay it by pulling me away from it, and then all this other nonsense. But I think Matt had a conversation with I don't know who he had a conversation with, but I remember Matt coming back to me and saying, can we have a meeting quickly? And he brought in who then became my line manager. I think his name was Tim. He was a content dev lead, and saying we've offered to promote you to content developer or junior content developer with this salary. Do you want it? And I thought, yes, that would be fantastic. This is exactly what I want, actually. I do want to kind of move away from the QA teams. I'm getting very frustrated with how they're treating me. And it gives me an opportunity to learn something new. And Ash is my mentor, and it'd be fantastic. And it just means that we can actually expand the team, because we get to hire a QA tester. And that's our first external hire to the team that shows we're growing and that we're looking to expand and we're looking to innovate and we're looking to create all this awesome content that we can only do if we scale up. So I took that job instantly. I was so happy. We were doing live streams at that point. I remember Matt introducing me on live stream, even though I've been on live streams many times before, as here's our new junior dev, and it's someone you already know, and it's fantastic. It was nice, and it kind of somewhat reversed an awful lot, was making me very frustrated about Jagex. Epic thanks to Matt for that.
So like, by the way, chat, let me know what you think. I've just tried to add a mic gate on my OBS to see if it cuts off background noise. So let me know if that's all good.
It's certainly a lot clearer.
Is it a lot clearer?
Yeah, it's certainly a lot clearer.
Oh, wow.
A lot clearer.
A louder, clearer. We'll see. Hopefully the chat okay with it. But I mean, it kind of ties in with a question I just saw in the chat. So, would you say that was your most annoying or frustrating thing at the time at Jagex at the time? No.
At the time, my frustration at the time, and this only got worse, but obviously at the time it was how little appreciation the old school game and team is getting. There were internal presentations being done company-wide where we were intentionally being put below RS3 to not be seen to be doing better. Again, I caveat this with, this was the management at the time. This isn't reflective of what's happening these days. This is obviously what was happening in 2014, 2015. I was getting very frustrated with us not being allowed to do this. We wanted to do sailing as a joke, and we were told you can't do sailing because RS3 might want to do sailing as a serious skill, so you're not allowed to do it. It's like, what's the chances of RS3 actually doing sailing? Let's be fucking real here. Which is why we did it as an April Fool's joke, because it was a kind of we've done sailing, you haven't kind of thing. It was just a quite nice opportunity for us to put two fingers up to everybody telling us that we're not allowed to do that. But at the time, it revived that sort of love, because I had so many ideas I wanted to put into game. You know, I'm a very, very creative person. There's so many things I wanted to do, and being a developer made that possible, because I would learn RuneScript from Ash. I think at this point as well, we're thinking about losing Paul. So actually, me moving to the development team meant that we still had 2 developers plus a new QA tester. So this was fantastic, and it was a fantastic opportunity. And the first piece of content I ever did was Rooftop Agility courses, and it was the first exposure I had to some of the fucking weird things that happens within RuneScape that you don't see as a QA tester. So for a good example, like Canifis, for example, Canifis is on multiple different levels, even though you don't ever actually. So obviously in the game you have tiers. So you have ground tier 0, 1, 2, 3. I don't know why this is a thing. I also don't know when it was made. I don't know why it was applied to Canifis and almost nowhere else in the game. But when you go into Canifis Bank, you go up that little step. It's just a step. But in doing so, you've entered floor 1. And you usually only ever enter floor 1 when you go up a ladder onto a different tier within RuneScape. So when I'm doing the Canifis Agility course, I'm like, okay, I'm on the roof, but I'm not on floor 3. But when I map this floor down, I have to go to floor 3 because I clip through floor 2, but you can't see the rooftops on floor 3. So I've got to paint the rooftops the same shape of the building without being able to see the building on floor 3, so players can see what they're walking on. And then when I jump to this building is actually on a different tier. It's actually on floor 2, not floor 3. So I've got to, when the player moves from this building to that building, actually jump down a tier. It's fucking weird. And I remember thinking about this, and sometimes I think if you've done the course, when you do the pole vault, sometimes you get stuck in midair, and that's my fault. But that's my fault because it's just such a mental system that it just. I couldn't figure out how to get the player's animation to work fluidly. And I think even Ash had a go, and maybe Ash couldn't do it either, I don't know, but that was weird. And that was like the very first Rooftop Agility thing I'd done, and that was like, holy fuck, if this is what I've got to put up with while doing RuneScript, I'm going to go fucking mental. And I'll be the first to admit, even now, I was not the best content developer. I was not. My code was not the best. I'll be the first to admit that.
So looking back on that now in retrospect, like, was there anything you could have, was there anything that you released up to this point that you kind of look back on and meant, maybe I could have done that differently?
Yeah, quite a few things. I think hindsight is a very powerful tool, and when you reflect on the way you've done things and things that you've learned since then, especially when I was also developing stuff. So when I was doing Rooftop Agility courses, later on when I did content further down the line, I found out that, if I'd done things this way, if I thought about approaching it this way or using these commands instead, or optimizing it XYZ way, it would have made what I did at the very start a lot more efficient. And I think every developer goes through that stage. The code you write at the very, very start of your programming career is very different to the code that you write 5 years down the line. And when you read it 5 years back, you think, what the fuck was I thinking when I did that? So it's I did the Canifis course, which was obviously a nightmare to do it. And then I think I did Alcarid. And Alcarid was just a different challenge entirely. And then I got an awful lot better. I improved. I mean, like I said, I wasn't great, but I improved a lot when I got to the Seers course, because the Seers course was very clean. And then I moved on and did the Ardi course, and that was even cleaner still. And that was just coming through working with Ash exposing sort of new ways of doing things, or thinking about things, or considering how things might work or interact with one another. And you just sort of learn as you go. So, I did, I grew as I did that. And I suppose I did learn some stuff when I got to the Ardi course that I could have reapplied to the Canifis course, but my God, I didn't want to touch that shit with a barge pole. Yeah. Oh my God, honestly, I shit you not. Again, you walk into the fucking bank, you're on ground 0, you go up a little ladder, you don't walk up a ladder, you click a ladder to go for, you walk up that step, the animation is smooth, and you're floor 1. why? Why was Canopus done that way? I think Ash explained it to me, but I think it was such a long-winded story. I think I said somehow I fell asleep, but not no. Ash. I think Ash was trying to justify in his head what the developer was thinking when they'd done it, and I think Ash was just probably making up as he goes along. Probably he didn't understand what was going on. This is probably what he was thinking. Who knows? The guy was probably on crack. Who gives a shit? But it was impossible. So, but yeah, no, I did. That was my first project, I think, as a junior project manager, junior content developer. So, and from there, I mean, again, I'm a creative person, so there was an awful lot of content that I was experimenting with in my test world. We all had our own test worlds where we would go in and we'd make content or test things. My test world was just fucking hilarious. It was just a murr of random ideas I'd had that I was working on that maybe one day I'd want to release. World events done properly.
I was going to say, like, are you able to talk about any of them?
Oh god, yeah, absolutely.
Go on, let's hear him.
I remember making like a Marauders map, which showed me where players were on there, and when you logged into my test world, it said, I can't remember how could I forget this line from Harry Potter? It's I solemnly swear I'm up to no good, and then you'd have to type it, and this map would open. Things like that. And then I remember I'd done a lot of PvP content as well in there, so one of the things, and we spoke quite publicly about this because this is an idea that I even tweeted. I'd made a version of Titanfall, but in game called Titan Brawl, where I had taken the Iron Titan models from so there was two versions of the RuneScape game in our test world. There was the version that was revived, and then there was the version that Ash had set for launch, where we'd slimmed out all the content that was in development. One of the bits of content that was in development was summoning, so therefore there were summoning assets in there that we could use, and we did use, because if you look at the Wilderness expansion that we did, there are Ents that you could kill and you chop the wood. So that's the Ent, which is the summoning familiar. So I pinched quite a bit from this branch or revision of the game, but I'd stolen the Iron Titans, and I think I'd made them so that you walk around. I made a defined square with destructible scenery, so a wall would be like an NPC, much like a barricade in Castle Wars, and players could shoot the wall, and there'd be turrets, which was the gnome cannon, where you could gun down players who are running up to your fortress to try and kill them, and if you hit enough kills, the Titan would fall in, and you could mount the Titan, and you could run and smash the ground and kill people. It was basically it was Titanfall, but it was I'd made this version, and it was something that I think I even released the design brief to on Twitter, things like that, and I had mounts in there. Again, by my own admission, I am very creative. I am Matt's description of me. You don't often agree with people's description of you, or you don't often praise their description of you. But I always think outside the box. I always think of a new, hilarious, or interesting, or hacky way of doing something that people said wasn't possible. And people have talked about mounts in RuneScape for years. And Ash said, "Well, we can't do mounts because if then a player tries to woodcut, how would that animation work where you're on the back of a goblin? And if you also are on the back of a dragon, how does the dragon, which is a 5x5, which takes up 5x5 tiles, walk through a one-tile doorway without its wings going through the fucking wall?" My approach or my view is, I don't give a shit. Let's just, if a player walks up to a tree, let's just demount them instantly so they don't actually woodcut on a tree. Let's solve that problem. And if a player walks through a wall on the back of a dragon, well, the dragon has to, for example, go through bank booths. We don't care about that. Why would I care if wings go through the wall? Skill cakes go through the wall when you put your back to a wall. So why would I care? It's just a small graphical thing. No one cares about that. People care more about that they're walking down the Grand Exchange path to the Barrett Bank on the back of a KBD more than they care about, oh shit, the wings touch the wall. That's a poor effort. No. So
I just to quickly deviate. I got a quick question about Rooftop Agility Course. Where's the idea about teeth gripping come from in Al Kharid?
Oh, that's so I think you go down a zip line with your teeth. That's an animation I stole from a quest. I think there's a quest. Maybe is it the Dorvishan course?
I think so.
Maybe there's the only way to get from the player from position A to position B. It's a huge jump, and I can't have the player just jump off the building because how are they supposed to jump? What is the RuneScape equivalent of like 40 foot without making them look superhuman? So I just simply stole, as somebody said, it's Skullball in the Wilderness.
Werewolf Agility.
Yeah. So I just stole that because it just made sense that why don't I just have the player do this? And bear in mind, we had no resources. Ash and I are not animators. We're not graphics designers. We can make assets, but we can't animate because we're not trained in animation. I've never done animation in my life. Plus, the tools that we had, if we had them, were from 7 years ago with different features in them from the features that exist in tools today. Because all Jagex's tools are proprietary. They built them themselves. I think they're all Android's tools. So the Jagged tool, which was the tool where you build, sorry, I'm not using the right terminology here because I'm not a graphics artist, but in the same way that you'd use Maya for animations, we have like Animed or something, which is the Jagex version built by people in 2003, I think. We couldn't then go and ask animators on the RuneScape 3 team if we've got some spare time to make an animation for us, because if they log into our tool, there's some features that they use that aren't present in our tool, or our tool has features that they don't have. So, we're not animators, so I couldn't use new assets. At this point in time, we were still reusing and recycling old assets because that's all we had to work with. Which is why when you see like the Malediction Ward and the Odium Ward originally, where the original Obsidian shield was painted blue and green, because that's all we could do. I mean, you can't expect us to do anything else really, because we can't create new assets. All we can do is find assets that you might not see so often that look new, or you might think were new, which is why we stole an awful lot of assets from the original version of the revision that we had, because I had summoning assets that weren't in the game at present, so it made it look like it was new. Or we just recolored things because all we could do. So I used the teeth sort of zip line. That's the word, zip line, because that's all we had. That's all we had. So that was the only way of justifying getting a player from A to B without making them look superhuman by jumping the RuneScape equivalent of 40 foot from one building to another. So
fair enough.
That's why we have that.
So, do you want to get into Zaya?
Oh, Zaya. Oh.
So
Zaya was my idea, and we had another. It came about. So I had the idea of Zaya for quite a while, but I didn't really know how to propose it to the team. For a long time now, I'd seen an awful lot of criticisms about us bastardizing the traditional RuneScape map by just appending hacky bits of content to it. So like Nightmare Zone, which is a bunch of lunar assets outside your nil, and then us whacking a hole in the wilderness to put in a giant spider. And in fairness, one of my criticisms of doing those bosses internally, as well as even though I'm responsible for some of them, is that you can't take an existing map space and then chuck a boss in it and hope everything's going to be okay. You have to design the area around the boss. And I can't redesign the wilderness to fit Venenatis or Battalion or the other one, the bear. That's the Callisto. Whereas when Ash did Scorpia, Ash built that dungeon for Scorpia, which is why she doesn't get stuck on anything, which is why it works. So, I was very critical with the fact that we were hackily throwing bits of content into the original traditional vanilla RuneScape map, and we were kind of ruining the experience. So I had, and a lot of people had the same sort of feedback, because I was seeing an awful lot of it on Twitter, on Reddit, of people saying, you're ruining. It's not really old school RuneScape anymore when you keep doing this to that. And I was thinking, well, if we had a new area we could do this, it would be great. World of Warcraft releases expansions. Why don't we have an expansion? Why don't we just have another landmass where we can do what we want, where players don't have to go there? We're not going to make it like RuneScape 3's version of the Elf City, where you have legitimately no reason to leave it. It's where all these new players will come in and wonder where new players would join and think, where the fuck is everybody? Oh, they're on the other side of the map in content you can't access, and they're never going to leave there because everything they need is there. So maybe Zaya could be an area of the game where you could go to do things, but you didn't need to go to do things. You could also be on the main RuneScape map, where it's, we're not impinging on that old school feel. So we actually had another offsite meeting where Matt booked the same Doubletree Hilton Hotel again. We talked about what the plan was going to be for the next year. And I remember sort of at the end, we sort of went around the table and we sort of spoke about what we wanted from the game, what each of us wanted and what we planned to do and what our contribution was going to be. And I said, and I was the last one to go. And I remember saying, I've got an idea for a continent. I think by this point, I settled on a name and I settled on the fact I wanted it to be a continent. and I wanted it to be 50% of the existing RuneScape map. So I wanted this huge land space where we could put all of our new content that wouldn't go onto the existing RuneScape map, where it wouldn't look ugly. We wouldn't have modern looking graphics next to old looking graphics, which would then attract criticism of our graphics artists who are making the game or making things that aren't old school feeling. We could have this continent where all this new content would go, and if you didn't like it, you didn't have to go there, because we would still update the existing RuneScape map, and you could be, you could have your RuneScape experience there, but at the same time, we could have this big area where we could do all this cool stuff. And because it's 50% of the existing map, we have an enormous amount of space where we could be really creative, where we could just let our creative juices flow. And I plotted down, I wanted a fucking Colosseum, which was a Jewel Arena on steroids, basically bringing back the old Jewel Arena used to have a feature underneath it, Jewel Tournaments, I think. Yeah, Jewel Tournaments. I wanted a Colosseum where you could have proper Jewel Tournaments, proper Roman style. I don't know if I got that history period correct or not, but as I ramble, but a Colosseum for that. I wanted raids. I wanted raids which were dungeoneering in nature while also being an actual raid, something which takes you an hour to do. You have to fight your way through it. It's not just beat the boss, wait for it to respawn, beat the boss, wait for it to respawn, beat the boss. Oh, there's the drop. I'm going to teleport out now. I wanted a massive raid. I wanted to just put in so much of this new creative content that in order to do that, we needed a new land space. So I proposed this at this offsite meeting, and everybody was really receptive to the idea. I think Matt summarized it with, if you can justify why this would be a good idea, we're happy to run with it. And I thought, well, that's brilliant. I'll do that. I'll sit down and I'll work out what it is I want, not what it is I want, but what it is I think would work, what it is I think players would want, what we have got in the game at present, which isn't very strong, that we could improve on in this area without changing it too much. Again, instead of putting Jewel Tournaments in the Jewel Arena, why don't we just have this new piece of content, which is the Jewel Tournaments, but done in a much better way? We can take the learnings we have from what made Jewel Tournament success and emulate that and improve on it with this new piece of content. We can then take all the PVM content we know which has been successful, Zulrah, and emulate what makes that successful and engaging, and then do it better but in a bigger PVM style raid. We could also have these fantastic PvP areas, etc. So all this cool stuff is what I wanted from Zaya, is what my vision for it was. The name I don't even know where the name came from at all. I wanted it to be short and snappy, because we have things like Canifis, which is 3 syllables, then Mythalin or something, and then Native not. So I wanted it to be like a quite short name, and I kind of settled on 2 syllables, and I just went through words in my head until eventually I found one which I thought, that sounds kind of it fits with the narrative of Old School slightly, I guess, because it's a sort of fantasy word which you can't relate it to anything else, so I'll run with that. So Zaya came about off that meeting, and everybody was really, really engaging with it. And then we actually had about 3 or 4 months before RuneFest, and I still have all the pictures now. They're on a hard drive somewhere, but I have all the pictures now of all the stuff that I was drawing. I used to use Minecraft for plotting areas. I used to go into Minecraft because I love playing Minecraft. I still sometimes do, where I'd build the area I wanted, and I'd run around it to sort of get an idea of scale, what it is I wanted in there, and I'd see it for what it was, and I'd use that, and I'd imagine what it would look like in game. So when I gave Ghost, or Gareth, who I've found out recently has left.
Yeah, he literally just left, unfortunately.
Yeah, which is a shame. But I'd use that to give him an idea of what it is I had envisioned, and I could give him a visual representation of what it is I wanted, because I built it in Minecraft, or I'd drawn it down on my notebook, or I'd gone into, because I had a Wacom tablet on my desk as well. And I'm not a bad drawer. I'm not good. I'm not saying a concept art is good, but I can still draw. So I'd done all these drawings of all these concepts that I wanted to put in game, and I used that as a platform for really marketing why I wanted Zaya in game. And then RuneFest was coming around, and by this point, I think we'd been quite public about us wanting to do a new continent. There's a lot of traction around it at this point. There's people talking about, oh, what's going to be on it? This sounds interesting. Tell us more. Which is great, because it just means that's an idea that I come up with is really resonating with the community, and that really empowers you to want to deliver on it and make sure that content that is going on there speaks to them and feeds them what it is they need, and corrects all the mistakes that we have made on Old School, and the mistakes that we know have existed from 2007 up to this point in time with the original RuneScape. I saw some people saying the hate this guy has for RuneScape 3 is sad. I don't hate RuneScape 3. I've got to remember, yeah, I worked at Jagex, but I'm also a RuneScape player. And there's a lot of updates that I personally don't agree with. Not everybody is going to agree with an update. There's a lot of updates I don't agree with. I can see why they were done. I can completely understand why they were done. I've obviously had access to the design briefs, and I obviously had feedback as to what would be different, as did many other people. I'm not alone in my dismay at where the game ended up. If you want me to be honest about what my opinions are, I'm going to be brutally honest, you know, and I am. So, but I knew, obviously, we all knew what RS3 became from 2007 to 2013. We all knew what content was in there. We knew what players liked. We knew what they didn't like. We knew what worked. We knew what didn't work, and we knew how to emulate that in such a way that would be received better. The players would be more receptive to that. So, you know, if people wanted Dragon Claws, people wanted Karasi, maybe we shouldn't give Karasi sort from a quest. Maybe it should come from a piece of PvP content where you actually have to risk something in order to get it, rather than being given it from this quest and you go to the wilderness and you one hit everybody. You know, trying to deliver content in a different way, in a way which is more engaging, which is what my pitch was effectively for Zaya. And I remember doing the pitch internally to some people at Jagex who were vouching whether or not, or what we were going to say would be publicly, or we had to do a presentation to this small committee at Jagex about what it is we wanted to talk about. And we do it as if we were pitching it at RuneFest, and they would turn around and say, well, don't mention this because it makes me think of that, and definitely don't say that, and maybe you could emulate this a bit more, and what you said there was fantastic. Make sure you definitely say that, which is what you should do if you're planning a pitch, especially a public event. And we pitched this idea at RuneFest, and the feedback was fantastic. I remember it being amazing. I remember feeling incredibly empowered. And again, at this point, I am very frustrated with Jagex, And the only thing really keeping me going at this point is these people love exactly what it is I'm doing with the game. And it's fantastic. And it's not just what I'm doing in the game, it's what my team is doing with the game. Ash, everyone loves Ash. No one dislikes Ash. Ash is really good at what he does. He really sincerely cares about the quality of the work he does, how it is received by the community, and doesn't just launch an update out and go, right, next one. He will launch the update out and he will monitor it and he will take care of it. It's all his. And we all were like that. It wasn't just Ash. We were all like that. And that's what made RuneScape or Old School so personal to us, was because we just really, really put heart and soul into making it work, because we were unhappy at Jagex. Ash was definitely unhappy before Old School. I wasn't. I became unhappy, but Old School offered us a platform to do something different, to make us happy, to get us the results that we wanted. The end result for all of us was, we want to make a game which is successful, has longevity, people like, and you know, we can be proud personally of the content that we put out.
I mean, look where the game is now. I think that's
exactly.
I think that's a testament to it. So,
and I did see, I can't remember your name. Sorry, I did see someone in the chat say, "What is the best thing that ever happened to Old School RuneScape?" The best thing to ever happen to Old School RuneScape, in my honest opinion, is actually Kieran, because Kieran is the best thing that's ever happened to Old School RuneScape, in my opinion, hands down, no question. I know people are going to say, "What about Ash?" But Ash happened to Old School RuneScape happened to Ash, not Ash happened to Old School RuneScape. Kieran, one of my biggest regrets is I never got to work with Kieran. RuneFest 2013, RuneFest 2014, I remember meeting Kieran, who was a player at the time. He was maxed on RuneScape. He played Old School religiously. He would come up and he'd be so genuine and passionate about ideas. We'd talk about high-level content, and he would talk to me about ideas he had for high-level content and how to keep high-level players engaged, so they didn't drop off. And various other things. And when I heard Kieran was being hired, Kieran was being hired after I left, but honestly, Kieran is a godsend for that team. You know, Kieran has fantastic ideas. And when I heard he was being hired, and when I've seen the work he's done, and he has done what I wanted to do. And if I could have the chance to work with Kieran, we could have done so many amazing things for Old School, so many. Because again, I'm not the best developer. I would never claim to be, but I had all these good ideas that people were quite receptive to, that I thought might be quite good. And if I could bounce them off of someone like Kieran, whose feedback I trust immensely, we could design something and create all this amazing content. The Jad expansion,
Inferno.
Inferno. Forgive me if I forget names. I haven't followed old school RuneScape since 2015. I've kept away from it, so I'm not
Okay.
familiar with things. I know of some stuff, but I might not be familiar with the exact names. But the Inferno, brilliant, fantastic, fantastic. I wanted to do an expansion to Fight Caves, and I could not have done a better job. What he did, how he made it is perfect. The pillar that I've watched streams, the pillar that moves to block the attacks, fantastic. It is so. His thought process is right on the money. It's right on the money, and I think if I could have had that sort of working relationship with Kieran, I think we could have done so many awesome things. I've lost what the original question was. So I got on this tangent.
No, we're just talking about like the original concept of Zeah. I mean, I kind of want to tie into. You mentioned you haven't played. You haven't really seen much of Old School since 2015.
No.
Do you know about how Zeah is now, and what are your thoughts on it based on what you know?
My brother still plays, so I do get tips. I do see what he shows me. When I do go home to London, I occasionally see him playing. He's maxed now, so I do get sort of feedback from him. So I do over his shoulder see what the game is. And every now and I still follow a load of people on Twitter, at least anyway. So I still get in my feed all these updates about what's going on in game, what controversies there are, what successes there are, what failures there are, etc. And I've gone blank. What did you ask me?
Just basically like compared to where you wanted Zeah to go, what are your thoughts on?
Sorry, I got so blank. Zeah is not what I expected it to be. I'm not going to say disappointed with it because I'm not, but it's not what I expected it to be. So Great Kurind, as it's called on there, I expected it to be a city within the continent. I didn't expect it to be the continent. I wanted the continent. I think Matt in his stream said one of the failures that he accepts for Zeah is that Zeah is too big. I think the opposite. I think Zeah is too small. And I only think that because obviously I had so many ideas for what I wanted each area to be, that it wouldn't be dead space. It wouldn't just be you're walking through this forest and it takes you 20 minutes to get from one space to the other. I wanted the whole thing to be filled out. And maybe that wouldn't be feasible. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe because Matt's obviously done Zeah, he has a good idea of what is successful about it because he's still ingrained in the community. He knows what the feedback is. I don't. So I'm only speaking on behalf of what my vision was for it and what it is. Maybe my vision for it wasn't the right vision. So again, I'm only talking about what my vision of it was, but I wanted Great Kurind to be, perhaps a fifth of the size it is, or maybe the size it is, but on a continent which is 5 times bigger than what it actually is. So maybe I'm being overly ambitious, but I'm an incredibly ambitious person when it comes to wanting to do all these, mental ideas. And maybe I know they do run away with me. Sometimes they're not all the best thing to do for the game, but you can't help being, having this creative side and having a platform to demonstrate it and really put it onto paper and then run with it. Zeah, I've seen it. It's good. I'm very glad that they've not turned it into an elf city, Prifddinas, like RS3. And again, I'm not bashing on RS3, but again, as a player or as a former player of RuneScape, I dislike the idea that this one place is the be all and end all. You don't leave it because, again, I haven't played it, but all of the feedback I've got from friends who play it say, "Well, I don't leave the elf city. I can do everything I need there. Every skill is possible there." Well, then what if you get organic players joining the game? They're going to come through into, I think it's Burthorpe now, and they're not going to see anybody. They're going to walk around this barren landscape, which is a traditional RuneScape map, wondering where everybody is. Does anybody play this game? Apparently, there's 40,000 people logged in, but they're all in this one space because they have no reason to leave. So I'm glad that Zeah didn't become that by offering the best-in-class content across the board. There's still reasons for people to be on the main RuneScape map, which is what I wanted it to be. I didn't want it to be this place you'd go to, which would override the vanilla experience you came to RuneScape for, the old school RuneScape for. So
in retrospect, I only really started playing RuneScape when Prif was already in, but I believe I stand by the fact that the moment the GE was added to Prif and the Max Guild in Prifddinas, it kind of kills off the whole being together in the Varrock GE, which I think is a massive thing.
And maybe I'm looking at it from even more rose-tinted glasses, because I remember the World 2 Falador days, and I remember having to hop worlds and go to different locations, and the world would be full, and seeing people all over the map, and that's something that old school should be. It is that experience. That's what we've marketed it as. It's a nostalgic experience. It's a return to what you knew. And to take that away from people entirely is something that we want to avoid. It's something I wanted to avoid, which is why I wanted to do new continents. So we stopped bastardizing the original RuneScape map and had all this new content over here, which isn't the best in class. It's got brilliant content over here, but if you don't want to go there, you don't have to. You can still see all the old assets over here and still have your game experience over here. We're not going to have a wilderness in this area because we don't want to destroy the wilderness in that area. We're going to have different PvP content over here, which is isolated, which maybe is bounty hunter in fashion, but has a reward that is worthwhile. It's all these things. I think I get credited for discovering Deadman mode, but I don't think I did. I think that was Matt. Not discovering, but engineering and inventing Deadman mode. I think people credit me for that, but I don't think I ever did that. I think that was all Matt. I think I might have run with the idea a bit because I did have an idea for a piece of content which was very Hunger Games in nature. Maybe that's what people confused it with, but I think Deadman mode was all Matt. So anybody who credits me for that, correct yourselves because that was all Matt.
Okay, let's go for a couple more Zaya questions. Where did the names of the houses come from?
Oh, in the current?
Yes.
Oh, so they are themed in some respect, and some of them are just quite random. So Piscarius, I think, is one of them. Pisces is obviously, it's a term related to fish. So I'm going to gloss over some of the specificities here just to get through the question, but Piscarius comes from that. We also have a place in the game called Piscatorius, so it's not too dissimilar from that. Hesidius, I think I can't remember what type of house they are. I can't remember. It's a long time ago. It's about 6 years now. So
I'll jump in when the chat come in. So feel free to feel free.
I can't remember where that name came from. The only name which was very random was Lovakeng or Lovakeng or whatever you want to pronounce it. And I think we were having a conversation about dungeoneering boss names and about how devs came up with those. They would just whack the keyboard.
Well, Ronan just literally said, I vaguely recall Dan randomly deciding to add the J to the end of the Lovakeng J for banter.
Yeah, Ronan is 100% spot on. I quite literally went, I added the J because why not? If the other developer goes, right, I'm going to name something, douche. And that's what I did. I just thought, well, fuck it, I'm going to add a J because why not? So that's where that one came from. I can't claim to have thought about that one too. The only one I thought about was Shizien. And that was more of a personal touch. And I don't mean for sob story here, but when I was growing up, we had a cat. We had a Persian cat called Shay. He was my everything as a teenager. He sat with me while playing RuneScape. Everything to me. And he was called Shay. And he had a number of medical problems, absolutely medical. They were heart wrenching for me as a teenager because you're seeing your cat, which is, it's weird to call him your best friend, but I'm not gonna be, criticize me all you want for saying it. I don't give a fuck. He was my best friend. Loved him. And he was a fucking warrior for going through the sort of surgery he had to go through, and he kept me happy. He was fantastic. And I think in some respects it sounded sort of Asian-esque, and going back through samurai periods, etc. while doing it, I sort of went for Shizien because I wanted it to sound warrior-esque. So it's sort of a micro tribute to my cat.
That's actually adorable. I love the fact that you have a little micro tribute to your cat in area in old school. That's awesome.
That is like the only part of it I actually properly thought about.
Wow.
I didn't want a sort of warrior faction, but I wanted to think, well, what inspiration can I draw for like warriors? So I was going through old samurai clans in Japan from centuries past, and it sort of fit together. So I went with that. That was the only way. Arceus, I got from Pokemon. I'm a huge Pokemon fan. I think it's impossible to be, I'm 28. Pokemon was a huge thing when I was young, and I still play Pokemon Go even now. I'm not going to be shamed for being a Pokemon fan. Say what you want. Arceus came from that, really. So that's where that one came from. There was an issue with the name of Great Kurind. When I was thinking of a name, unbeknownst to me at the time, or I accidentally named Great Kurind after, I didn't name it after, but the name was very, very close to a top Nazi official. And this was wholly by accident.
Are you able to say who?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I remember Matt and Ash wanted a sort of a weekly meeting about what was going on, or Matt wanted a weekly meeting and Ash came in. And I came in and I spoke about what I was going to do and what this place was going to be called. I'm like, this place is going to be called Great Goreng. This is what's going to be in it. And I remember Ash and Matt looking at each other and looking at me going, Great what? I went, Great Goreng. They're like, how good's your history? I'm like, pretty good. you know, I did history at school. I really enjoy history, World War II history in particular, which is why it's even more surprising. And they said to me, so what does Hermann Goering mean to you?
Oh my
And I went,
goodness.
shit. Obviously, it wasn't spelt the same. It was spelt, change K to a G and change D to a G. It's spelt the same. So I'm like, fuck. Yeah, okay, I concede. I'll change the name. And I just went back to the drawing board and went, oh, I'll change that to a K and that to a D and call it Great Goering. So it was just a complete accident. But I remember Ash and Matt having that. So Ash was sitting there, as he does with his mug, sitting there, and then he just goes to Matt. And then Matt goes, "Man, how good's your history?" So it's like, oh shit, okay.
So it used to be called the Great Goren, correct?
Great Goren, yeah, which would have been a weird thing to do. A lot of weird things have existed in RuneScape over the years that have been accidentally done. There was a developer who accidentally made an ethnic cleansing machine, totally by accident.
I'm sorry?
Okay, Ash told me this story, but the developer was still there at the time. I don't know if I was there, but in player support when this happened, but the developer accidentally made an ethnic cleansing machine. I think the concept was supposed to change your haircut. So you would go in, select a haircut, and no matter what skin tone you went in with, you would always come out white. So if you were a black female character and you went in to change your haircut, you would come out as a white female. You would always come out white, and it just got nicknamed sort of the ethnic cleansing machine. It's like it was a complete accident, obviously, but that was one of the things we've done. There's been many things which you think, oh god, we're glad this didn't go live. So
yeah, no kidding.
So that obviously harped back to that. But obviously, you know, when I named it Great Goring, it's like, yeah, I'll change that. I'm not going to be responsible for accidentally glamorizing the name of a very, 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 very senior evil Nazi official.
Gotcha. And is there anything else you want to cover in that regard? That's old school and stuff like that.
I don't know. I mean, there's an awful lot to go over. I was there from the beginning. It's actually quite weird to think about it now that the one man who didn't want to be there before Oscar even happened is now the only original person left working on RuneScape. But I would urge I don't know the new guys working on the team. I don't even know how big the team is now. 20 plus.
It's like 20. It's pretty big. Like it's definitely gained ground.
That is fantastic to see. And you know, if I was still there, I had things I'd like to change. And
would you, if like everything that's happened, if you had an opportunity to go back, would you go back?
No.
Okay.
I'll elaborate slightly.
Sure.
I'm in no position to make demands at all, but I would have some, which is unreasonable. It's very unreasonable. But there are certain things I'd want to be able to do. I have certain people I wouldn't want involved. I'm in no position to make those demands. Absolutely no position at all. But it just wouldn't work. I mean, I miss old school when I miss the guys. By that I mean Guy now, because it's just Ash. Since Ghost is there. Actually, no, I suppose there's still John.
Yeah.
The game's in good hands with John. The game's in good hands. I didn't have the best opinion of John when I was working with him because John and I didn't really see eye to eye. We got on, but there were some things I didn't like about him, and I'm sure there were some things he didn't like about me. But when I remember seeing a clip that was sent to me of him talking about RuneScape Mobile, and he was on stream, and he was really, he just oozed passion about why RuneScape Mobile was such a good thing, and he wanted people to get involved, and he wanted people to not be shy about playing it on a bus. You know,
yeah, he created the face that I'll actually put it in my chat right now. He is responsible for like the emote on my channel, which is my pog face, where he literally goes, "Oh, you know, you're just on the best player, and then you know, if you're quickly caught watching porn, it's fine." And I was just like, "What?" Like, you know, and he was passionate about it.
It was that, and it was honest because you know some people would be scared to say the word porn on a stream. You know, but it was the fact that he was so candid and so honest and so passionate about it that changed my opinion of John entirely. I watched that and thought, John, when he joined us, was an incredibly good curator, stuff, very thorough, and the community sort of the hate he got for some of the drop tables and some of the bugs that went in game was wholly unjustified. John and I both went on a boycott of Reddit because of just how horrible the feedback was. John stopped using Reddit. I stopped using Reddit because it was just a cesspit of just fucking nonsense. And the mods on there at the time, I don't know if they're the same mods. Again, I'm speaking for at the time. were as shit as the current League of Legends Reddit mods. I mean, they don't give a fuck. And it's basically the same as back then. And John and I basically just said, you know what, to fuck with Reddit. You can tell us to look at Reddit as much as you want. We're not going to do it. We're just going to completely ignore you, you know. But so, the sort of hate he got was so unjustified. But, you know, I didn't think much of John back then. But seeing John talk about, he was a fantastic curator, so like I said, but we didn't really see eye to eye. But seeing him talk about RuneScape Mobile just changed my opinion. It was like, this guy has matured, and this is the person that needs to be working on old school. This is the person that should be working on old school. This is exactly he's got the attitude, the behavior that everybody should have. Everybody should have that enthusiasm. And when I saw that clip, I was like, John, hats off to you. I bow down to you. That is fantastic. Well done for that. As I understand it, he's still to this day, I think he's now even the project manager. He's taken Matt's position, as I understand, which is good because the game's in good hands. It's got Ash on it still. It's got Kieran. Need I say more? I don't know the other people, so I can't talk about how good they are because I never worked with them. But Kieran, fantastic. Chris Archie, fantastic. Really cares about the game. Gareth was. I'm convinced Gareth has killed someone in the past, but
why?
He's impossibly nice. Impossibly nice. Like, impossibly nice. It's like, Gareth, what are you suppressing? What has gone on in your past which has turned you into this untiltable, unshakable, like I don't know. I'm convinced he's killed before. But he's just such a nice guy. And, you know, it's a bit shame they've lost him because Gareth joined as a QA tester from an agency to help test the EOC. And half the people that joined from the agency, I think like 30 people joined, and then it's only Gareth and one other person left because they were the only two that actually had any brains whatsoever. But the only two who could spell. Where Jagex sources agency, I've got no idea because everybody who joined was fucking useless. But
oh my god!
I mean, they were. I mean, that's the reason they disappeared. I mean, we brought in these people to test EOC, and 3 weeks in, we're like, no, go home. All 28 of you go home. You're not worth being here because you can't even write a bug report. Whereas Gareth and this one other person stayed, and Gareth didn't know anything about RuneScape. He wasn't even a good QA tester, but he tried. And that's what made you respect him. You thought, you don't know RuneScape, fair enough. There's like 15 years of history here that you need to learn. You can't expect someone to learn 15 years of history while testing EOC. You just need to know the basics. You also need to be able to write a good enough bug report that a developer who is reading your report from somebody who doesn't play RuneScape can understand and, you know, identify the bug. And he managed it. He did it, and brilliant, fantastic. And when he joined us, I think he joined us as either he joins you or we kick him out of Jagex because we have no need for him anymore. And he was a good graphics artist. We knew he was a good drawer, so we just said, well, come on board, do a test for us. Not entirely sure why we tested him because we were like, yep, we'll have him because it's a resource we don't have. I'm not entirely sure why we tested him, but we accepted him, and he did amazing things ever after. He was very slow, but he was only slow because he would not compromise on quality, which is a good trait to have. But I remember when I was doing the Corporal Beast, I said I didn't have the archway that you go through to get in, and we had Alfie with us at the time, and I said to Gareth, "Can you make me an archway for the Corporal Beast? This is what it looks like in the original one. Could you just make this?" And Gareth was like, "Yeah, when do you need it for?" I was like, "Friday," and it's Thursday. It's like, "Oh, I can give it to you for Tuesday." I'm like, "Alfie, you have 2 minutes to make me an archway. Do it." And Alfie would go make an archway in 2 minutes. It's just this is why it looks so rubbish, because it is literally just Alfie going to an oblong, cut a hole in the middle, painted brown. There you go. That's all I needed. That's all I wanted. Whereas Gareth would craft me this enormously articulate, ornate archway, which would look beautiful, but I just didn't at the time. I just wanted this done. That was it. So so that was that. So Gareth was brilliant, but you know, back to the original topic, under the helm of John, I think RuneScape's I think Old School's got the best product manager it could have from that team. I don't know who else is on that team. I don't know them very well enough. Maybe somebody else could take over John's position. I don't know. But from knowing what I know of John and seeing what I've seen of John since then, best person for the job.
So, before we obviously go on to a topic, obviously, that we're going to have to touch on, and obviously feel free to say what you want to add now. Is there any other like Bugaboo stories or anything like that come to mind that you fancy sharing? Like, just from my personal, because I'll be honest, I'm personally fascinated with Bugaboo stories. I find them quite fascinating.
I will tell one which I think we covered up.
You covered up?
I say I covered up. We covered up very well, actually. I have publicly spoken about this one before, so I don't think it's going to be too much of a surprise. But I remember we went home on a Friday and we came in on a Monday, and Easty messaged me. Easty is the upload manager.
Yep.
With something along the lines of, "Have you seen the error log page?" I was like, "No, why?" So I opened up the error log page, and he goes, "Go to world, whatever the world was," and it's just error, just tons of errors, hundreds of errors to do with Dragonfall Helm. It's like, holy fuck, what's this? And Easty went, log into the world quickly and do the following. So I log into the world and do the following, and I'm duplicating Dragonfall Helms. I'm like, holy fuck, holy shit, that's awful. This is all dupes. And Easty's like, yeah, you might want to sort of find out who did that and chase out the gold. I'm like, not again. There's not another money pouch bug, please, no. So I look at it, and fortunately, it's only three people, and conveniently, this is not in old school for the record. This was in RuneScape, the original RuneScape, before there was RuneScape 3 and before there was old school. There was just one RuneScape. And I remember looking at it thinking, oh, this is dreadful. This is another money pouch bug. It's only three people. Conveniently, these guys have found this bug on a Friday evening when we all go home and we don't get back to a Monday morning, where we then see the error log page. And the error log page doesn't escalate errors to us, because the error log page errors all the time for various different things. The player has crashed on the world, error log. So it doesn't otherwise...
An achievement doesn't have a name set properly, error.
So things like that, things would error all the time. So it didn't obviously escalate it, and it just posts, it prints out, some random error. So we come in on Monday morning, think these guys have had a whole weekend to do this, and there was no one in to deal with this. They obviously didn't publicize it, because why would you? They wanted to keep it to themselves. They wanted to get patched. So I banned all three of them, because at this point bans are happening again, and I have, it's my remit as bug abuse lead to deal with it. So I banned all three players. I removed the Dragonfall Helms from the game, or removed what they had from the game. But if you look back at the Dragonfall Helm on the GE graph around 2013, you'll see it floating at like 20 million, or 40 million maybe, and it drops to like 10. And the community was like, what happened? Is a merch clan dumped all these items? What merch clan was doing all this? And we're like, yeah, it was a merch clan. Yeah. That solves that one. We did recover most of the gold. I'll caveat that with, I managed to get rid of almost all the gold because these players were very slow at selling it. So the Dragonfall Helm went down in price, but the gold didn't make it to the game. But the Dragonfall Helm never recovered. I've spoken about this one before. I've tweeted about this one. So this is public knowledge at this point anyway. But that was the one where Easton and I looked at it and thought, the community is saying merch clan dump. Let's just run with that. And then after like 3 days, it disappeared. No one spoke about it again. But I believe the Dragonfall Helm still never recovered to this day.
There have been... I've actually been in that situation a couple of times myself, with stuff that's happened in RuneScape, where things have happened and it's like, well, actually, this is either we tell it or do we go with it, and so on and so forth. There have been situations, yeah. I can sympathise, and I kind of understand that situation a lot. And
it shouldn't come as a surprise to people that this is what happens, because there are many instances, no matter where you are, where there might be media spotlight, not so much from journalist websites, but social influence from key people in the game who might tweet about it, where it's not in your best interest to let the truth come out. So you cover it up with something else because that's easier. Jagex have obviously done this many times. I can think of many instances, and there are many other studios who've done this. Many studios have done this. It's not a new thing. If the community want to claim that this is a merch clan, then let them think it's a merch clan. It's better than us going, oops, sorry, our mistake, there was a dupe. We just had a year of a really bad dupe. We don't want to go out and say, oh shit, there was another one. So, it's no surprise to people. So we just ran with that one. That's the only other sort of interesting bug abuse thing I can think of.
Okay.
Other than trying to undo all of Chris's work. Mod Chriso was a nice guy. He joined Jagex the same day as I did, on the same team as me on night shift. Doesn't play RuneScape, came from the army, was incredibly disciplined, but was a huge troll. And
that showed him, didn't it? Jesus Christ.
Yeah. He put himself in front of people he didn't need to be in front of, and he trolled them, and he just did hilarious things. And then I had to come along when I inherited his role, because he was bug abuse lead before I was, and had to undo all of that, because we have a bug abuse community in the game. They're always going to abuse the game. It's good to have. And Jagex has always had a bug abuse lead. There was one, I think the role was invented in like 2004, and there was like 5 curators before it was eventually me. So when I get all their old files, all their old documents on who people are, what they do, what their player names are, what they've done, what they've been banned for, what they like doing, where they live, etc., all this nonsense. And I've got to look at it, and I've got to then forge relationships with these people off the back of Chris trolling them and then making them have no faith in Jagex to reward them for exposing, valuable bugs. Jagex doesn't have a bounty scheme.
Do you think there should be?
No, okay. No, there shouldn't be a bounty scheme because we have a bug report system. It's in the player's best interest to report bugs which is damaging to the game they play. So if there's a dupe, we're not going to reward players for reporting the dupe. If you want RuneScape to continue to be successful and continue to be healthy, report the dupe. It shouldn't be in game. I know there are reward schemes for reporting people who DDoS the game, and that should be a thing. That's fair. But a lot of people thought, oh no, Jagex don't read bug reports. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, they do. There are 2 people at all times during the day, at least there was, whose job it was to make sure that bug queue was at 0. So when you submit a bug report, you can guarantee that within an hour, someone has read it, verified it, closed it, or actioned it. If you don't see the bug getting fixed, it's not because it's not a bug, it's because it's entered a queue of things to be fixed. It's just low priority. So, yes.
I do wish there was a better way of it. So what I've learned in the 4 years I dealt with RuneScape and visibility of
You've gone silent all of a sudden. Yeah, I can't hear you anymore.
Wow, my microphone just disconnected. That was interesting. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. It popped up on my screen, a quick disconnection. Sorry, right, let's start that again. So yeah, what I learned in the 4 years I'd been with RuneScape was visibility of bugs is never really communicated via the bug report system versus 100%. A Reddit and a Twitter. So if they were able to do something better for that, people would use it more.
100% agree. 100% agree. And I think I wasn't alone in giving this feedback. It wasn't even me who came up with the idea. There were plenty of other people who had the same idea, which was when in-game bug reporting came up. Why don't we put a list of the most commonly reported bugs on that day if we've launched a particular piece of content, or known bugs that are going out with the content that we just didn't have time to fix or might be construed as a bug, which aren't a bug. So when players submit it, they look at it and think, oh, actually, this is already here. I don't need to submit the bugs. Therefore, we don't get 400 issued with bugs reported about the same thing, which takes up 2 people's full time from the QA team going through. There should definitely have been a more publicly available list of bugs. Maybe there is these days. I don't know, but that was feedback that I had and many other people had. I wasn't the author of that idea, but I certainly shared the sentiment wherever it came from. I think people who were in the position to make a decision on whether or not to make it public also agreed. It was just how do we go about doing it in a way which is going to be effective and not a waste of somebody's time. I think when you're reporting website bugs through the website, there were bugs on there, but they had been there for like 4 or 5 years and had been fixed, and no one had updated it because, again, Jagex was quite poor at updating internal things at that point.
Cool. All right. So obviously, I have to ask the question because people are going to say, "Why are you doing this stream if you're not going to ask the question?" And obviously, whatever you want to say, by all means. So obviously, when it comes to the departure from Jagex, I'm just going to say and leave the floor to you. Anything you want to say on that, it's all yours.
Okay. I fully expected this to come up. I want to clear up a few rumors first of all. One, naturally, everybody thinks it's Corporal Beast.
Corporal Bug.
Yeah, with the Gmaul. Ash made the Gmaul bug. That was Ash who did that by accident, of course.
He actually recently confirmed that as well on Twitter.
Yeah, he's confirmed it many times.
Yeah.
It was, I think, to give you some context, I think John discovered a bug with the Gmaul that was more or less a feature at this point. And he submitted a bug to Ash. Ash looked at it and thought, well, why should we fix this? But then John was quite insistent that we do fix this because it's not intended behavior. Ash had tried fixing it, but the way the Gmaul worked, I'm not going to go into details because I can't remember, so I wouldn't do it justice by trying to explain it. But Ash would try and go into detail or try and fix to give it the intended behavior, but something weird happened. And, it's one of those things which you do really have to try and engineer to make happen. So John naturally didn't spot it and it went live. No discredit to John, because knowing how that sort of bug works, it's a hard one to find. So to kill that rumor, no, nothing to do with Corporal Beast at all. I'm surprised that people jumped on that bandwagon so quickly, considering Jagex denied it had anything to do with Corporal Beast. Yet this one, I think his name was like Wildy Owns One or Return to the Wilderness or something, who made a YouTube video, he has no insight into what goes on inside
clickbaiting, so on and so forth.
He has no insight into what goes on inside Jagex. He doesn't know what, left and right internally. He doesn't know what decisions have been made, doesn't have inside scoop on anything, but he makes this video to say, this is exactly what happened, and everyone runs with it. But then, Jagex come out and deny it. Why would people let the truth get in the way of a good story? So, everyone ran with the Corporal Beast bug. It happened at the same time I bought a new car, which, again, is very frustrating because it makes it look like Corporal Beast supplemented a new car. Bearing in mind, I had ordered that car something like 6 months earlier, and it was
it like an import thing?
No, it was brand new. I had it made.
That's what I'm saying. That's the time to import it, make it.
Oh yeah. So I've gone to Audi like 6 months earlier and had the car spec'd, and I had it delivered at the time I left Jagex. It's just sheer coincidence. In the same way that when I tweeted one day, tweet Ronan. Tweet Ronan and you'll be made a PMod. And I think Son on Old School tweeted him and got PMod, and everyone's like, oh my god, it's real. No, it's not. He was made PMod by a completely different team by accident, but because it happened at the same time that I said tweet Ronan to get PMod and he did it, it made it look like Ronan done it. So it was pure coincidence. It had nothing to do with freaking Corporal Beast. I'm going to disappoint people in saying that it's nobody's business.
I mean, let me just jump. For me, this is something to do with you and your personal life, because obviously it was a job you had. Of course, people are going to want to know what's happened, but at the end of the day, why? If I was to ask you right now, the pain that you went through when that happened at that time, honestly, what was it like?
I don't know how to describe it, because in some respects it was a relief.
A relief?
I was bitterly unhappy with Jagex. And Matt can attest to this, because I had a meeting with Matt like 3 weeks before I left, saying to Matt, I'm considering resigning. And I have a resignation letter written. It's still in my Google Drive, dated like February, I think, 2015. So long before I left. So anybody claiming that, oh, you're just saying that, I have that there. And Matt will attest to this. I had this meeting with Matt. And I also had this meeting with my direct line manager, Tim, saying, I don't feel I have creative freedom on Old School. I don't feel I'm valued. This has been at a time where bonuses had just gone out, and there were junior QA testers on the MTX team who got like £3,000 or £4,000 more. And it's not to do with the money. It's like, why are we rewarding people on a team which is designed to make money, who want a significantly lower salary than me, when bonuses are measured by what salary you're on, based on your performance, where I've been rated as having a high performance. I had, Jagex had like overachieving, achieving, underachieving, you fired basically, and I was overachieving, achieving, overachieving. It's like, why am I being valued like this? And I was not in a good place at the time, so I was struggling with a few other things, personal life, and I was bitterly unhappy at Jagex, bitterly unhappy. And I remember saying to Matt, look, I think I've done as much as I can do with Jagex, and there were certain things that I didn't agree with Old School RuneScape. Certain things that were in game at present that I'd wanted removed. There were certain things I wanted to do that I was being stopped from doing. So a good example of that would be Kraken literally does no damage to you, and that's a bug. But it's not a bug that we knew about, because it's an engine bug. And it turns out there are two parameters on the Kraken file itself which cancel each other out, and both of them are being called in the code to do damage, but they're cancelling each other out, so they don't do any damage. This is an engine bug, so it's not something we can test for. And I remember saying to Matt, well, not just Matt, but the team, I want to fix this because I did not design the Kraken to do no damage. And it's a shame that we have this boss that people enjoy doing. It's part of Slayer, which is a very popular skill, and my boss isn't doing that. I want to fix it. And I'm being told, no, it's a feature now. It's like, well, no, it isn't. It's a bug, and we can fix it, and we know what's wrong with it. And I don't like the fact that my boss is doing no damage. I want to fix it. No, you can't fix it. It's a feature. It's like, well, why?
Because in the perception, it's considered a nerf, right?
Yeah.
Because even though it's a bug fix.
Because if we put out an update saying Kraken now damages you, people were like, well, why didn't it before? We can't say, oh, it was a bug, because that's been a bug that's existed for a year, and then it makes us look stupid because we've had this bug in the game for a year and we haven't attempted to fix it. So it's become a feature. It's like, well, okay, so that's another catalyst to what's making me very unhappy. And then I didn't like splashing. I hated splashing. Hated it. I hate the fact that new players would come to the game, they'd come in and they'd go to Lumbridge and they'd see all these people in iron armor splashing on chickens, goblins, spiders. They'd perhaps try and talk to these players to find out, what are you doing? What's going on? no one's replying because they're all AFK and splashing. And then they can't train in Lumbridge because every single NPC is taken up by some. I mean to say the C word there nearly. Splashing. It's just frustrating because that should not be the opening game experience. That you're the first time you enter a new game. Those few moments that you enter the game are the most precious and important moment of a new player's experience. And you lose a player so quickly if they join your game and the game is not engaging and there's nothing for them to do. And if all they see is the same twat wearing fucking iron, splashing on chickens, goblins, and spiders, it's infuriating. That was our public image, and that was what new players saw, and I hated it. So there's that as well, and wanting to change that and being told no, you can't do that. It's like, oh, okay. And then I was having issues, and I remember Matt pulled me into a meeting as well to ask me what was wrong, and Matt brought in his boss, someone I don't like, and I still don't like. I'm not going to go there or drop names, but I think the dislike is very mutual. Was sort of asking me what's going on in personal life. Am I okay? They can see something's wrong. And I just didn't want to speak to these people. Matt, I'd want to speak to, but this other guy, I didn't want him to have anything to do with me. So I didn't open up to Matt at all or for anything. I just did not feel I was not in a good place. And then I was presented with a few options, not from Jagex, but my own options in the sort of corner you find yourself backed into with the situation you find yourself in. You make brash decisions. And I wouldn't say it was a mistake because it certainly was a mistake. Jagex was definitely justified in terminating my contract. Absolutely. I would have terminated somebody's contract if I knew they'd done it, but it wasn't. I'm not going to expose what happened.
No, absolutely.
It's not like it was business, but it was done. It was no malicious intent behind anything that happened. Obviously, it was done because I felt like I had no choice, and I think people might not understand that. But at the same time, look at my relationship with the team at the moment. I think Matt and I don't talk day to day because we do completely different things now, but Matt and I will talk. We exchange conversation on Reddit, on Twitter. I still talk to Ash. I still go out for a drink with Ash every now and then. Ronan's in chat. I have no issue with talking to Ronan, and Ronan appears to have no issue talking to me. So obviously, unlike again, I never met Jed. I never. All right.
Someone, I'm just gonna call this out. So someone in the chat just said, "Oh, we paid your salary. We should know." Honestly, fuck off. All due respect, fuck right off. Because that's a stupid comment.
That is fucking ironic. I don't work for you. Nobody at Jagex works for you. You're not obliged to play RuneScape. You just do. I'm not obliged to work there. I just do. Saying you pay my salary, therefore you have every right to know what's going on in my personal life and what happened in the business is fucking moronic. So I'm going to call you out on that. You're an idiot. I'm just straight up. That sentiment does not go down well.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't want to jump. But I just no. Before they said because I started saying it, and now they just said they were kidding. But as I saw that. Yeah. No, I mean, again, sorry if we overreacted to that comment, but I've seen that comment so many times that it is such a silly comment. And I see it in other communities. I see it. I play League of Legends heavily. I'm heavily immersed into it. I've got esports stuff everywhere, and I see people saying it to the devs there. It's like, we pay your salary. We want to know what's going on. Why did you do this? And we should be fired for making this update I didn't like. And I hate that mentality because you really destroy the. You destroy the passion and the immersion and the emotion that the developers have for making the game when you make out that you own them because you pay their salary with your membership. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. I want to get on to while you before we just quickly carry on, the whole conception of we pay your salary so we deserve to know why you get fired. That's completely irrelevant of the personal decisions that are made, but I mean, I wanted to make that clear.
Oh no, fair enough. Well, I agree with you, and thank you.
So, just coming back really quick, because obviously, you mentioned it wasn't a good time for you. You'd been brought up, and
I wouldn't say it wasn't a mental health crisis, but I found myself in situations I'd never been in before. And when you find yourself in a situation you've never been in before, you have to find a way of navigating that. Either you can let that situation destroy you and crumble and break, or you can find ways around it. And I found ways around it which in retrospect weren't the best ways around it. I did what I did because I felt I had to. And that's that. As much as I say, and being completely honest, it wasn't malicious. Clearly, my relationship with the team hopefully symbolises that, because I do really, really respect the team that's there, and that's that really. But I'm
So-
sorry to have disappointed people who turned out for the answer. But
it's like when we had the Mac K stream, they were expecting like full on specifics. Like it's not meant to be like that. It's the streams, these streams are meant to, you know, talk about the stories, everything else that comes with it, so on and so forth. And I do not want these streams to set an expectation of when you come on these streams, you have to tell us like the juicy gossip and so on and so forth. It's up to that person. There will be no pressure from me to make that happen. So on and so forth. That is the way I will always do it. If you don't like the way I do that, then tough, deal with it, because that is not what these are about. These are about stories, about sharing those experiences and what they do. And if they want to go into any details and stuff they do, then so be it. But I'm not going to go on stream and say, what's the specific reason you got fired, so on and so forth. That's the approach I'm going to take.
And I respect you for that. It's fantastic. And I also respect Matt's answer, because I watched Matt's art thing as well, and Matt was brutally honest. And actually, Matt mentioned that we met up. We didn't meet up. We bumped into each other at Insomnia, I think, a year later. I went to Insomnia on a whim. I think I woke up that morning and thought, let's go to Insomnia, because I had some friends there who invited us. They had a spare bed in their hotel, and it's only in Birmingham. It's like a 2-hour drive, so why not? I was living in London at the time. So my brother and I went up there. We met some friends, and I knew Jagex were there, but I wasn't expecting to bump into anybody because Insomnia is huge, and I didn't know how long we were going to be there. But I remember walking into Insomnia, and all of a sudden, I remember a hand came on my shoulder. I turned around, it's Matt. He shakes my hand straight away. It's like, oh, fancy seeing you here. It's like, oh, it's great seeing you here. And then Matt started talking about his meetings with ESL while he was at Insomnia and how fantastic Ulster was going. We had, just a really good conversation. And going back slightly, when in Matt's stream, he mentioned that it was a tough emotional period for him, and was for me as well. But I think one thing that I regret the most is when I walked out of the Jagex building for the last time, Matt was with me, and I could see Matt really trying not to cry. And he was doing his damnedest, because this is obviously a hard situation for him anyway. And he, you could see he's holding back emotions, and I felt awful for that, because you think, this is me that's done that. And you've let someone down, and it sucks, because you're always going to let someone down, so you know that you are going to be that failure and disappointment. So it's inevitable feeling that way. But then you get to see it visually, and it sucks, and it sucks a lot, because obviously I had big ambitions for the game, and Matt did too. And then you sever connections this way. It was silly. But then Matt mentioned in his stream that we met up, and he asked me if I regretted it, and I said no. And I only said no because I feel like in life I shouldn't have regrets at all. Everything happens for a reason, and the key thing is you learn from that, and you apply what you've learned to make sure you don't make that mistake again, and you go on and do great things with it. And I'm always an optimistic person, always, which is why when I was in stupid situations in the past, you have to find a way of getting around them, and the optimism always says, try this, because you will get to the end of it. The light at the end of the tunnel. There's all these hurdles in the way. You've got to find a way of navigating them, and I found a way of navigating them, but perhaps not in the best way. Definitely not in the best way. I don't regret it. The only thing I really regret is just A, letting people down, and B, I didn't get to work with Kieran and not working with Ash anymore. But I was coming to my end of the end of my tether with Jagex anyway. I was so fucking angry with. I think one example I'll give you is RuneFest 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for RuneFest 2014, we were just launching the Corporal Beast, and one of the exhibitions we were doing at RuneFest was come and try and do the most damage on Corp, and whoever does the most damage wins a golden gnome, I think. It was trying to solo it. It wasn't doing it as a team, it was solo it. And we were going to present this at RuneFest. We were like, we're getting more presence at RuneFest, because obviously more and more people are playing our game, and more people are turning up to RuneFest. A lot of the people turned up at RuneFest 2013 were for old school, and they were asking, where's the old school team? What can we see from the old school team? And we were always being, substituted towards the second stage at the back of the arena that you've got to walk 3 hours to get to, and it's a tall, small stage, and it's freezing fucking cold in there, and the tech doesn't work, and things like that. It was just silly, and it was getting frustrated that why have we not got the same stage presence as main RuneScape? I understand you don't want to market this huge event for this old version of the game when you've got this new modern version which is continually being updated. That makes sense, but we were always being hidden at the back, and if you saw that, then that just cements that that's what was happening. And I was so frustrated with that in 2013. That when 2014 came around, it's like, yes, we're on a big stage. Matt had told us we're on this big stage. We've got this big announcement. We're talking about Zaya. We're talking about all of this. It's going to be live streamed live. We're not going to be on the second channel. We're going to be on the main channel. All these big things were happening. And it's like, yes, we're finally getting the exposure and visibility. And then I was told the day before RuneFest, by the way, you're not presenting your award. We're going to give that to the RS3 team. We're going to present your award at RuneFest. And I have a very short temper. It's one of my many failures. I went fucking mental. I admit I overreacted massively, but I went mental. And I was told my two best friends, Ryan and Ollie, Mods Oliver and Mod Ryan, who were on the Ninja team, were being told, no, you're going to present this award.
Oh, my lord.
And I'm like, because they were presenting an award already, so they thought, well, on the back of that, why don't they just also do the old school award? And Ollie and Ryan were like, no, give it to Dan. Dan really wants it. Just give it to Dan. And Matt was like, no, it's not going to happen. It's not Matt's decision. Matt's just relaying what he's been told. So Matt's job is, again, the diplomat and just passing on the information. And I went fucking mental. And I remember calling the person out loud in the office a cunt for doing this. I was fuming. And
why do you think they did it?
Not the right way. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I genuinely believe. I do know. I believe they just wanted to limit our visibility. And they used the excuse, it will take too much time to get you on stage and introduce you. It's like, no, it isn't. Here's the old school team. Here's Dan and Ash to present the award for the court bug. 2 seconds. It doesn't make it. Don't give me that bullshit. It's fucking rubbish. And Ronan just said, I remember that vividly. I remember saying out loud, you're a fucking cunt.
Oh my God.
Again, sorry for the expletives, but I'm just being completely honest. I shouted this, I was so angry. And I remember Matt dragged me into a meeting room and said, X person you called to wants to kick your ass for that. So I'm here right now to say, shut up. This is what's happening. Don't say anything else. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, fuck me. I'm fuming. There's so many things have gone on. And then it just gets worse. It escalates. And Jagex gets, there's more and more pressure on us to suppress us. Or I feel to suppress us. And I'm just losing my rag with working there. That, which is why I then said after the bonuses came out, and it's like, oh, okay. I know it's not all money orientated, but getting a nice bonus is always good.
Right, the bonus is reflective of the performance. So I didn't mention this on my interview on the day I left, but there was one time where the RuneScape TM team became just me for in 2017 in August. 2 TM members went on to other roles in Jagex. It was just me on RuneScape TM, and I had to deal with that for 5 to 6 months. And then this was 2 or 3 months before reviews came up, and this all involves people who aren't at Jagex anymore. But when it came to, I was just given a, you're doing well, you're on track. And to me, I was like, this was a team of 3 in CM. I've had to deal with CM on my own for a game like RuneScape, which means hosting the streams, doing the news posts, doing the patch notes, doing that stuff on my own without any support from the company at the time because they didn't have the resource. And I felt really it was a gut punch for me, and that people who share their excitement and jubilation because that's the way they are, but they maybe when they get something and you hear that around the office, and it's a real it hurts. I get it. Yeah. Let's put it that way.
And I was already feeling undervalued anyway. And when bonuses come out, people talk. Obviously, it's supposed to be confidential, but people talk. Obviously, you ask your friends what they got. They ask you what you got. Somebody else's friend told them, and then they told them, and then tells my friend, who then tells me. And you think there's already. I'm not going to go into details about this, but you might remember it. But there was already an internal scheme for the MTX team where they were being paid quite a lot for the promotions they were doing.
So this was when that was I wasn't in RuneScape until 2016, so any of that is out of my time, basically.
Right. Yeah. So there was already quite a controversy internally, which was addressed from I think Mark MMG addressed this internally when he found out what was going on.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. I think it was actually a news post. A public news post went out after a particular piece of content. So many players. This is still probably on the RuneScape homepage. You can probably find it. But a piece of content went out. I think they were the boots with the
Silverhawk boots. Silverhawk boots.
Yeah. And there was a post that went out afterwards. Yeah, when MG said we are not going to do updates like this again, and it was designed to sell. MG said about it, and obviously this doesn't happen anymore for the record. I'm again, just to caveat, everything I'm talking about was at the time under current then management, not current management. So sentiment is obviously completely different from then till now. So I was frustrated about that. And then when you hear about, this junior QA tester who's been here for, a year and 3 months has taken home how much? When all he's done is work on this content, whereas I'm working on this game with these amount of players, doing all this stuff, having this stage at Roomfest, it just adds to that whole list of thinking no one gives a fuck about what we are doing, not what I'm doing, but what we are doing as a team. And I just lost all enthusiasm for it at that point. All enthusiasm. I didn't. And Matt will tell you. In fact, Matt did tell you. When I was working on some content updates, I just lost the drive, and it's not good because then you end up putting out sloppy content. So Clue Scroll was very sloppy. Achievement Diary is very sloppy. Hold my hands up. That was all my fault. But I felt so undervalued. It's like, if you don't give a shit, why should I give a shit? Which is the wrong attitude, totally wrong attitude to have. But at the time when everything else is going on, you just think, why am I fucking bothering? So it just got to a point where it's like, okay, I'm done. Like, my mental health and my happiness comes first. And I've been an advocate for that ever since. Some people say, and I saw Matt say, there are some people who in the team who work way beyond their finishing time and because they care about the game. And that's great, absolutely. Full power to them. I did the same thing. But there's also nothing wrong with being someone who's a 9-to-5 person because in the UK, I don't know if other people know this who are elsewhere in Europe. In the UK, we work more hours than anywhere else in Europe. In the UK, some of you have 4-day weeks. Some of you have, work 6 hours less a week. We work more hours than anybody else. And when you consider that, most of your life is work. How much time do I have to spend on myself? How much time? I got 2 weekends and perhaps 6 hours an evening to spend on me. My time is so valuable and so important that I need to be focusing on me, making sure I'm covered, making sure I'm looking after myself, making sure I'm doing things that I want to do. And I'm not slave to this machine or to these people with these expectations, which is why I said it was somewhat of a relief in some respects. When you said to me, what was that feeling? The initial feeling was actually, I'm free. And it's not free from Jagex, but I'm just free of responsibility in some respects.
I have to say, personally hearing that, obviously, because I don't know what happened, but whatever has happened to lead to you being terminated and then you saying felt relief for it tells me that there is a big problem there in regards to your mental health, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's come down to that to make you feel relief, then that's pretty insane.
Yeah. I don't want to play the mental health card because I'm quite fortunate. I don't have any mental health problems. I've never been diagnosed with anything. I've never needed to go to doctors for anything. I've never taken any medication. I always find a way of making it work. And I have an incredibly supportive family and incredibly supportive friends. So there's always, I make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Shit happens and you just find a way of dealing with it. But my time is valuable. My time is important. And I won't let anything impinge on my time. I need to make sure that I'm looking after myself. I do what I need to do. I do what I do as well as I can do it. And I put everything into it. But when it comes down to my time, that's it. Keep away. I need to focus on me. And I make sure I invest in myself as well as in what it is I do, because it can't be just a one-way relationship for the rest of my life where all I do is work for somebody else or do my own thing and just don't focus on me. So in some respects, it was a relief because I just thought at that point, I have no responsibilities. I mean, I've got a car to pay for because my car was financed for anybody who thought I just bought it outright. So I still got to pay for that. I'm sharing a house with Jack Mob and Oliver, or Ollie at the time, so I've got to pay rent still. Cambridge rent, very expensive. Our rent was our collective total was close to $1,000 a month. So I still got to pay for that. Plus the car, plus I'm supporting my now ex-girlfriend slightly, and various other things. There's so much going on that in some respects, all of that went to the back of my mind. It was like, this is me time. I'm actually quite relieved. And I think I just spent the next 6 months playing Destiny. I was playing Destiny online with friends, and it was just so chill to just sit there and think. I mean, it was just nice to sort of be like, oh, okay, I get to spend some time by myself. I've got no other than bills to pay, which I had money to pay for. I ran myself dry, but it was just nice to sort of just relax and not have any responsibilities. And that time was necessary because I wasn't being pragmatic about finding another job because I was trying to sort of revel in the freedom that I had. But I did end up working with friends doing some interesting things. And I eventually went back to London, where I was made a job offer, a very good job offer in London, actually. Where my parents live in London, so I moved in with my parents, back to my old room, effectively. My parents have a nice big house in London, so it was pretty comfortable living there, and it was comfortable. But I just made sure that from now on, as I go forward, everything I do, even now, I go to the gym, I make sure I focus on myself. I then go for a swim, I go to the sauna, I then go to the spa for a massage, because it's important for me to wind down, and then I come home and just chill. I'm in my house. I own this house, and I'm in a games room at the moment, which is being half decorated, and it's just a complete fucking nerd cave, because this is my place to go. My PC is not in my bedroom. My bedroom is for sleep and relaxing. This is where I come to chill, sleep that away. I've sort of somewhat focused my life now around making sure that I have space to go to. And it's like putting a kid in timeout. I put myself in timeout. I go here. This is where I focus on me. I'm a big advocate for that now. I had conversations with people on LinkedIn about making sure that you always put yourself first, and I do. So it was a relief.
I have to ask you the question. Obviously, after it happened, in the days, weeks prior, did you look at social media? Did you look at reactions to it?
Yes, and I shouldn't have done. Yes, because it's Chinese Whispers is fucking dreadful. People thought it was Elysian. I mean, use your head. Why would I rely on RNG to make money from single drops? Come on, like, why am I going to do that? It's just it doesn't make any sense. I can't make sense of it. But I did look at social media, and I shouldn't have done. At this point, again, I'm boycotting Reddit. And until you sent me the link that you put today for asking me to pull topics from that link, I hadn't been to the old school Reddit at all in 5 years. So today was the first time I've been to the old school Reddit. So I was on a boycott for Reddit. So I just didn't touch it, and I still haven't. But I did look at Twitter, and people tweeting me all sorts, and there were some people tweeting, "How dare you do this to RuneScape?" And there were some people going, "Oh, I can probably understand what you did. I still respect you." And there were some interesting things in there, but I think people, with the level of anonymity that they have, posting tweets to people that they're not going to see face to face, are feel more entitled to give their opinion. In fair play, you have free speech to give your opinion. I have the free right to not listen to it or to pay attention to it, but it's hard not to. And which is why I made a point earlier about the guy in chat who said, "We pay your salary, we should know." That when I see people to other developers posting really sadistic, horrible things about something I dislike, and I get frustrated with League of Legends. I play League all the time, and I get frustrated and think, "Why the fuck is this balance change in there?" And I might tweet right support going, "What are you thinking?" But I'm not going to go there saying, "You should all kill yourselves. What are you doing? You're never going to get hired again. You're a fucking piece of shit. Hope this never works out for you." It's like, why? What do you get from that? Other than, just because mummy never said she loved you doesn't mean you should go on the internet and fucking rage at other people. You're not going to get anything from that.
Clip.
It's horrible, and I think some people should just. Obviously, all it's going to do is it's going to validate people who go online and do that. All me saying that is going to do is validate that what they're doing is getting the intended result. And if you're one of those people, fuck you. Otherwise, if you're someone who finds themselves occasionally on the receiving end of that, my only advice for you would be social media is not the be-all and end-all at all. No. It really isn't. Like, I know some people feel like social media validates what they do, their existence. They might feel that they don't really have any friends, and by posting things on social media, perhaps it gives them purpose in some respects. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but don't feel obliged to look at it, because it is just a cesspit of shit. And I use it these days sparingly anyway. I usually use it for reading up on updates to do with league or esports in general, because I follow a lot of esports, as well as various bits of business development that I'm doing these days. But for the most part, like, at the time, I shouldn't have read it, because it did really get to you, because it just sort of, for the most part, I was actually more affected by the people saying, "I'm actually quite upset about what's happened because I thought you were a fantastic person." And you feel more let down by that, because you understand that these people, I wouldn't say looked up to you, but they expected more of you. And no one wants to be disappointed. You never want to hear that "I'm disappointed in you" thing, because it just means that you let someone down. And if you don't feel put off by someone saying "I'm disappointed in you," then there's something wrong with you, because you should always strive to do the best thing that you can do, always. And it's not just me saying that in front of a camera. You should always try and do the best thing you can do, because, Kobe Bryant, unfortunately, recently he did the very best he could every day. And look at the outpouring of support people have given him for and recognizing him for. And that's what you should be recognized for. You should be recognized for all the great things you did, because tomorrow you could get hit by a bus. And if the only living memory of you is you were this toxic prick on social media who didn't do anything, and then fuck me, that was your parents wasted their time bringing you up, didn't they? It's just awful. It's just awful. So I make sure that I just do what I can as best I can in the manner I can, and I treat everything else as just secondary to all of that now. It's just not important.
Like I'll always working in CM, I'm privy to seeing the biggest shittest comments to come at I've seen people, devs who I've sat next to devs and I've literally seen death threats going at them in messages and then watching them essentially crumble. Because obviously, when you're not a CM, and this is not to say you don't have to be a CM to kind of strengthen it, but when you're a CM, you're kind of used to the negative comments, so on and so forth. But when you may be a developer and you've put so much time and passion into a thing, and then it's getting ripped to shreds, you're being told you should go kill yourself, or you should be fired, or yada yada yada. It is horrible. And when you are not resilient to that, and you watch them break down, literally, it's horrendous to see.
When we hire new people on the old school team, we have to say to them, look, you're going to be on the live stream.
Oh, yes.
People are the Twitch chat is going to be here. You're going to see some things. You're going to see people comment on the way you look, the way you sit, the way you speak. They're going to say you're ugly. They're going to say you're fat. They're going to call you a virgin. They're going to say, who the fuck is this disgusting team that's making our game? They're going to say some pretty horrific shit. Are you ready for that? And we should never have that conversation with new starters. This is a new person in the company. They're really enthused to be working on old school. They love the game. They really wanted to be here. We've given them the chance. And we're saying to them, be prepared. Someone's going to rip the way your hair, someone's going to rip the way that, that your nose is shaped. Come on. We should not have that conversation with new starters. It's just a thing. And, unfortunately, I do have tough, thick skin. I've been a child of the internet. I grew up playing games. I know what it's like. I'm not surprised by it. But it never stops you being disappointed by it. And it never stops it eventually getting under your skin and really getting to you, because eventually you just become so disenfranchised with what it is you're interested in. And that's the thing about it. Being disenfranchised by the thing you care about most from a minority, but they're a minority, a vocal minority of people who just want to, disempower you. It's horrible. And, I lost a lot of my momentum with old school RuneScape, largely because of Jagex. But then imagine that coming from the community. Imagine if Jagex were treating me brilliantly and you all loved a lot of people loved what I did, but then there's a select few who are bringing me down and I leave and then nothing happens. It's horrible. It just shouldn't be a thing.
I mean, I feel like the gaming community nowadays, compared to a couple of years ago, is a lot more toxic in general. It's not. I don't think it's just an old school thing. I think it if you go back years ago, the toxicity has increased as years go by. That's just a fact, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not even limited to the games industry at all.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not limited to that whatsoever. You only have to look at certain celebrities and not Caitlyn Jenner. Sorry, which of the Jenner sisters? I say brothers normally. Which of those has made their first self-made billionaire? And there was people criticizing, saying you're not self-made. Blah, blah, this, that. It's like, well, what difference does that comment make? Who gives a shit? She's been successful. She's made a success. Leave her alone. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you don't like them. Just fucking leave them alone. And it's just unnecessary. And just a thing. It's not limited to the games industry. I speak on behalf of the game, but not on behalf of it. But I speak because that's the industry I'm in. That's the side I see it all the time. I'm not world famous. I'm not, I haven't launched a new clothing range, and therefore I'm famous and people are talking about how shit it is. I'm a developer, or I was a developer for a video game, and so I see this side of the community, which is very toxic. It's all around the world. It's all global, which is why I advocate these days making sure you take time for yourself, no matter what it is you do, because there are always going to be people who try and put you down and try and take advantage of you. So just get on with it.
If you were to give any advice to people giving criticism, valid criticism, to, let's say, anyone in the gaming industry, how would you approach it?
If you're going to complain about something, make sure you have an alternative to what it is you're complaining about. So if you don't like a piece of content, not only explain why you don't like it, but propose something different, because then we create a dialogue and then we can have a conversation about why what you suggested might work or won't work owing to what I know about how we can implement that as a developer. Or we have to create a dialogue. We can't just sit there and say, that sucks, fuck off, you shouldn't work there anymore, you're a shit developer. Well, great, I can take a lot of feedback away from that. What sucks? What about it sucks? What don't you like? What could be improved? What parts of the content were actually good? Have a dialogue. There's a Channel 4 campaign, I think, or an ITV campaign at the moment called Talk. Just talk to people, have a dialogue, understand people, find out what your friends are doing, find out how your friends are. Same thing when talking and giving feedback to developers. Start a dialogue. If you're going to say you don't like something, say why you don't like it. Good, fair enough, good start. But then propose an alternative. If you don't have an alternative, then you can't claim to dislike something. In my mind, I can't say this content's rubbish. Well, why is it rubbish? Well, I think it's rubbish for these following reasons. But then I can't think of anything to make it better. I'm not adding value, am I? What I'm doing is just taking value away. So, that's my advice. Is if you're going to criticize something, make sure you have an alternative. And it's, you don't have to put a world of thought into the alternative. Just give an alternative, because then, like I said, we can have a dialogue, and it gives you an opportunity to understand my point of view while I understand your point of view, and we just go backwards and forwards. And eventually, the two ideas, the one that you disliked and the one that you wanted to propose, will merge, and we'll have a good idea, perhaps. It's that dialogue.
So, I feel like I can speak on behalf of people live in the chat and also people watching and saying, everything we've just talked about, everything we just talked about, like, you obviously waited 5 years to say it. Why now instead of maybe a year after it happens? Like, do you want to talk about it?
I mean, no reason in particular. I mean, Ash and I, like I said earlier in the stream, Ash and I spoke about doing a live stream. I was being quite serious. I don't think Ash was. About just talking about our adventures within RuneScape. But I didn't come on here to talk about, why I left Jagex. I came on here to talk about all the cool things that I might have done and that resonated with people, and as well as all the interesting things that happened behind closed doors at Jagex that I can talk about, that people might think, oh, this is an insider thing. The same with Matt. I mean, Matt said some interesting things that I didn't know about at Jagex, and, I learned something from that. And it's nice to get an insight behind the closed doors of, a studio that you follow quite closely with a game that you're very passionate about. And, for as many criticisms as I have of every gaming community, not just the RuneScape community, you can't fault the passion that they have. They speak from the heart, even if they don't use their head while doing it. Again, that's not to say everyone does that, but there's, a significant portion of people who do. So it's just more of an opportunity for me to just follow up with what I said with Ash. And I got tagged in the Matt K interview, and I watched the interview and thought, actually, it was a fucking fantastic interview, and all credit to Matt for being as honest and candid as he was. And I learned some things about that. And I saw some people in the chat, and I can see people in the chat now saying, what about Jed? I've only met Jed once ever. I bumped into him and a few others as they were walking to the pub for lunch, as I was walking back from the pub they were going to for lunch. And I bumped into him then. Didn't say a word to me, never spoken to him, can't comment on anything Jed related. Literally no idea. But Matt went into solid detail there, where he talked about how disappointed he was. And it was nice to see Matt give an honest review, and I wanted to give my own honest review as well, because I've got some stories as well from the development side of things that I think people would appreciate, and hopefully people did really like the content that I worked on. Apologies for how shit some of it might have been code-wise. Again, I'm not a brilliant developer. If I was to give myself any position within the team, I put myself as like creative designer. If I was to give myself a position, that's what I would do. But it's things played out the way they did. I've learned from the mistakes that I made, and I've applied them as I go forward. I still make mistakes now, and I'll reflect on them in 5 years' time and think, shit, should have done this differently, should have done that differently. Definitely won't trust them again. Definitely will trust their advice in future, etc. You learn. Life is a learning experience.
So, I mean, we've talked about all this stuff in the past, right? I mean, I know you don't play old school. You've only seen it occasionally via your brother. But I mean, if you were to have a guess, what do you see for the future of old school?
So prior to doing this, I did a fair bit of research, because I just thought it'd be nice to comment with a good understanding of where the game is at the moment, to be able to predict where it's going. I feel like the game has already peaked.
So same as Matt then. Matt said the same thing, if I recall.
I don't think it should be a surprise to people that the game has already peaked. And this is going to be a controversial thing to say, and there will be some people that I imagine will either hard disagree with me, or this will be mixed feedback. I think personally, and again I could be wrong, the success of the game, in my mind, can only come from moving the polling system. I think so long as communities have the option of pitting themselves against each other, and PKers voting down PVM content, and Iron Men voting down PKing content, and Skillers voting down PKing content, I think, like, as long as communities can fight against each other, and they're not thinking about the biggest. I'm seeing a lot of people say true, but then you're a fraction of the community. You mean you're less. People in the Twitch chat are less than 1% of the community. You say true, but
when this gets clipped, inevitably, and will be posted to Reddit, I imagine we'll see a different story. Like, we don't know. We'll see.
So, I wanted the polling system to go when I was there, and I even suggested it. But, the whole game is centered around community-driven content, community vote what goes in, which is why I felt like I had no creative freedom, because I suggest all these ideas, and all of a sudden, community say, no, because PKers might enjoy that, and then Iron Men can't do that. And it's like, well, you're all collectively part of the same game. You all have the same goal, which is to see this game be successful. Because if there is no PKing content, we lose all the PKers, and therefore there's nothing for them to do. That's a significant portion of the community that's disappearing. Therefore, we have, that escalates and scales up into additional problems. I loved the polling system at the start because it was a brilliant idea, but as time went on, and as I got more and more immersed into wanting to do different ideas, like I wanted to do a quest, but then what's the chance of a quest going through because people think that's a waste of dev time. I should be focusing on Iron Man updates or whatever. It just felt like I had no real direction left with the game. And I think the polling system, personally, again, this is my personal opinion, is the barrier for the game to reach new heights. Because PKing content at the moment is lax. It is something that I would have loved to have addressed. I did the Bounty Hunter system. Actually, it's my favorite piece of content I ever made was Bounty Hunter, the original version.
Did you read up on Bounty Hunter too?
No.
Okay.
I know that it got removed recently owing to a video by, I think his name is Torvesta. I'd not met the guy. He came sort of on the scene slightly after I left, I think. Maybe he was around beforehand, but he certainly wasn't like BOTY tier or Faux Freedom tier at the time. So, all credit to him for making this really articulate video. I haven't seen it, but it's obviously resonated with the community very well, and Jagex have obviously taken a stance and taken action. So, PvP content was a big part of what I wanted to do on Zeta. It's PK content is important. Doing the Wilderness update was a fantastic idea because it just meant that there needs to be risk areas in the game. Skillers need to understand that if they want access to certain real high content rewards, they're going to have to, nothing is free. Nothing is free in life. You're going to have to risk something to get it. And if there's someone in the wilderness who wants to hunt you down and kill you, then so be it. Tough luck. You can't be like, oh, I want that, but I don't want him to kill me because he has every right to kill you in this area. You can't complain about that. And then there's so much fragmentation in the community. The more we fragment it by adding micro communities of people that, like Iron Man, for example. Iron Man's a good idea, but it's created this subculture of Iron Man can't do this, therefore we're not going to vote for it, even though it's a PVM update which is going to satisfy X percentage of the game. It's silly. And I think the game has peaked because mobile kind of did that for them. Mobile, fantastic idea. It's taken Jagex way, way too long to get that ready. Way too long. And I saw on Matt's stream that he saw a notification coming up, which is like a year late. So it just goes to show that, still behind the trends. That I think the polling system is sort of, it's the next opportunity for the game to reach a new peak. If people agree, then great. If people disagree, still great. If you're going to disagree again, offer reasons why and counter argue. But how long do I think it might go around for? It's hard to say. I think it's always going to exist. I think back in the day, before old school came about and RuneScape 3 came about, I think there was like an audit done talking about how many members can Jagex get down to before and still exist with the current team size. And I think it got the number from the audit was very low. Jagex wasn't close to that number, but it was very low. So I think the old school team, with the size it is, with the attention it gets, I think can get to, can almost disappear and still sustain itself. So I don't think the game is going to die, but I also don't think it has any opportunity to really grow until there are some radical changes to the core philosophy of the game, which is a shame because I do want to see the game succeed. It was my baby. I worked on it. I brought it to life along with Ash and Paul, and I obviously want to see the game grow. I saw someone in the chat saying, "Do you think it's an esport?" I don't think it's an esport. I don't think it needs.
Yeah, I was going to ask your thoughts on Deban and esports for competitive old school.
fantastic minigame, well, minigame or game mode, whatever you want to call it. And yes, Jagex have made some success of doing that as an esports tournament. Yes, there are teething problems. Yes, there are other sort of really core issues that need to be addressed before it makes it, before it can really succeed, uninhibited. Do I think it's esport? No, but again, that's just my opinion. I've never thought an RNG-based video game where you can barely influence what happens is an esport. It's just who can click faster and whose roll of the dice is better. Can it be turned into an esport? I think it can. I think you have to have the right game mode. I think you have to have the right mechanics. I think you have to address where players play, how they join, not doing it locally on people's PCs where they can cheat and DDoS each other. I think so much needs to be addressed before we reach that esports stage. I'm a huge consumer of esports. I can only speak on behalf of myself as a viewer, and comparing it to other esports that I follow Overwatch, I follow Counter-Strike, I follow League of Legends, obviously. I watch a fair bit of Hearthstone, it's and beyond. So it's I can only really talk as a viewer of those, and combining all my feelings towards those games and how those games are operated, how they run, how they, to see how RuneScape fits into that dynamic. And at the moment, I don't think it does. Not to say it can't, but at the moment, I don't think it does.
Like, to me, I've always seen Deadman. I don't consider Deadman to be in the way I know it. I consider Deadman to be these one-off big events, good, great views, does very well for exposure. I don't, in my perception of it, consider it as an esport itself, but it did a great job in what it did.
Yeah, I think it obviously got an awful lot of views because when you put key influence on stage like Skillspect, Bo Tifo, and a few others that I don't actually know, but I know are quite popular on stage, you're bringing all their audiences together, and you're creating, you promote yourself on Twitch, you get yourself on the front page, you're very visible. It's fantastic, especially when there's a big prize pool. You have to be very confident nothing's going to go wrong, and you can't be confident nothing's going to go wrong until it does go wrong, because you can't predict what's going to happen. I think they've been very unlucky with an awful lot of things that have struck the game.
Agreed.
So far. You also have to remember, and the community should remember this, that there are I think Jagex are over 1 million subscribers these days. However, many of those players play Old School exclusively, and there are a dev team or a QA team of 20. So you are dev team of 20 testing a piece of content that 1 million people are going to play. You are not going to find all the major exploits, everything wrong with the content, because you can only test it 20 ways, where there's 1 million people who can test it 1 million ways. And they've been very unlucky. Some of it could have been caught, probably. Some of it may have come down to inexperience. Some of it could have come down to being overworked, over-engineered. So many different variables. I wasn't there to judge, but judging by Matt's view of people working overtime to get things sorted suggests that perhaps people were just so overworked that you become sloppy unintentionally in what you're doing. But it can be an esport. It's a nice spectacle. It is nice to be a top page on Twitch. It is nice to have these big prize pools and change people's lives by giving them 10 grand, because 10 grand is a fair bit of money. It's a considerable amount of money. That is very significant, and it's nice to know that it can be life-changing like that. But the actual spectacle itself is merely just that. It's a spectacle. I don't think it's a sport.
I'll ask you one personal question, and then we can look at questions in the chat, and then I'll ask you one more to end it, because I think we're getting to that point now. 3.5 hours, we've talked about a lot. So, I mean, it's been awesome. So, one question from me, and then you can have a look in the chat and take any questions you want, and then I'll ask you one more to finally end it. Do you see MTX coming to Old School in the future of the game?
That's an impossible question to answer, really, because who knows what's going to happen in the future. The team will obviously push back as much as they can, obviously. Matt is right. Yes, the conversation has been had about adding MTX to Old School. All of us were not so much involved, but we were party to conversations about adding microtransactions to Old School. And at the time, Jagex wasn't owned by its Chinese owners at present. If the next owner, when there is a next owner, if there ever is a next owner, might come in and might completely change that and demand that we microtransact Old School. There's nothing you can do about that, really. All you can do is advise that this is a very bad idea, This is what the community sentiment is going to be, and this is the potential damage. Take it or leave it. And if they decide to take it, then what can you do about it? You know, you can walk out and say, I'm not doing it, fair enough, but there'll always be someone internally, or you can hire externally who will. So it's unpreventable, really. Do I think it will happen? No. I think that the game is well established enough as it is. I think it would take the game to have a significant. I think the game would have to really, really decrease in scale, and all that for Jagex to sort of consider it again. I think Bonds were brave, although I agreed with them. I think they were brave because, you know, we're one step away from adding that cosmetic override that you pay for. Then you're one step away from adding that amulet, which gives you double experience. You know, it's. I think Bonds were brave, but they were a good step, and I'm glad we did them because it does open up an awful opportunity for growth. But I don't think it will happen.
Gotcha. All right. If you see anything in the chat, feel free to ask questions away for Dan, and if you see anything you want to answer, then by all means.
I've got two people tagging me. Is Dan a Wooks fan? I always got on very well with Wooks. I actually PM'd Wooks an awful lot about boss ideas. I did speak to him quite intently about bosses that can't be solo, so that he then, you know, had a more interesting time streaming a challenge, which is again why I rate Kieran so highly, because Kieran sort of has that same mindset. Yeah, I get on with him. I don't have anything against him. Very quiet guy. Knows what you're talking about. If you talk to him about something he really enjoys, he will talk to you forever. So that's one question. I got another one saying, Dan, did you feel you were treated unfairly on your departure and the run up to this?
I mean, I'll be honest, we've already covered this, I'd say, a fair bit.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, you can answer again if you want to, but I feel like we've covered that a lot already.
Yeah, I'll answer it. I'll be succinct. Yes, I did, and no, not in the run up to this. Can you say anything about the inner mechanics of staking? Nope. I know there's some debate about whether or not to remove Duel Arena or not. I'm of the opinion that we shouldn't remove Duel Arena. The Duel Arena shouldn't be removed. We shouldn't be babying people for their silly life mistakes. People learn from their mistakes. If you get yourself into silly debt, you know, if it's not going to be staking in RuneScape, it could be, you know, the fruit machines at a pub. So I don't think removing it's going to make much difference. Did they prevent you from mixing Wildy boss safe spots? No, we could have done. I just think we were quite lax in approaching that topic. Ideally, I'd like to have fixed them, and I think they probably should be fixed. But I think by this point, it's pretty much a feature. So no one stopped us. I've got the chat's rolling now. What's the most radical idea you've had for old school aside from moving the polling system? Probably Zaya. Probably Zaya. And that's in the game. So if I've got 1 out of 2 so far, so maybe the polling system might disappear in future. But I wouldn't hedge your bets, not at all. At least not on my feedback. So I'm just trying to. I'm gonna have to pause this chat.
That's fine.
If you mentioned you could have done a lot of things if given a chance to work with Kieran, what are some things you would like to have done / worked on? Is there anything you regret never having brought into the game? Next on my list, I did Bounty Hunter. That's the update I'm most proud of. I love the Bounty Hunter 1 system. I know people might have mixed feelings about it, and I know we can improve it. I never really got a chance to improve it based on the feedback post-launch. But instead of improving it, I think what we should have done is just design a new system and give PK as a better option for the future. PKing is a very integral part of RuneScape. It's existed forever. There is a wilderness for a reason, and I think we should definitely do something. I think we should definitely have done something to honor those players and give them a viable alternative to make PKing worthwhile. No one wants to go into the wilderness and just kill people. If you wanted to just kill people, you'd do it in the Duel Arena or bloody Castle Wars. You want a reward for it. You want your time to be validated by a reward. Problem is, people aren't willing to risk all the items they own in the wilderness. They don't want to lose their Elysium. They don't want to use their Godsword. They don't want to lose whatever items have come out since then that are mega valuable. But there should be a trade-off for PKing someone in the wilderness, and there should be risk. So I think trying to find that balance is an important conversation to have, and I would like to have had that, and Kieran would have been a good person to have it with. I cannot rate Kieran highly enough. I don't know what his opinion is of me. Every time we have spoken and met up, because he only lives around the corner from me, he quite literally lives, 200 meters away. Probably 300. But he is so on track with what's good for that game that I see. Another question: did you ever see Dungeoneering coming back? Matt said there will never be a skill in RuneScape. I saw that on his stream. I want to go out and say, genuinely, if it was up to me, I would put Dungeoneering in. Maybe you could hate me for that, but I genuinely believe Dungeoneering is my favorite skill. I fucking loved it. It was so much fun. It brought people together, and it forced people to work as a team. It forced people to. You had no choice. If some bastard wanted to hide the fucking key, then 3 other people would go look for it. Like, that's fantastic. Which is why when I was doing raids, I wanted the Dungeoneering theme of you open this door, you have no idea what's going to be on the other side of the door, and it's going to be a sort of you have to navigate this puzzle raid thing while killing shit, while getting soul gazers who might drop a rare item which would be valuable inside the raid. I wanted all of that in raids because I wasn't confident we'd get Dungeoneering. But if you said to me right now, if I was still at Jagex and I had one update I could put into game, just one, I'd put Dungeoneering in, and that would be the thing that I put in. Love Dungeoneering. I may be biased, but I just think it forced people to work as a team, and it brought every skill together. This is a skill that requires every other skill. Not like I've never done invention, and I don't know what it's like, so I can't really comment on how it is.
Like, Dungeoneering is better than invention. Like, I will always stand by that fact.
But it brought all these skills together. It was just good. It was just good. And I loved it. And no, I'm biased. I loved it so much. So, I got 99 quite early on. Then I got 120. And I never went for 200 million, but I wish I had done. And if I did, I probably would have still carried on beyond that. I had people keying for me and joining me on my journey to 120 who were 200 million, not getting anything out of it other than just helping me. And everybody else that I was with, because they enjoyed Dungeoneering. It's just one of those good skills. So that's what I would put in if I could. What jumper are you wearing? This is a limited edition Fnatic hoodie.
Oh, limited edition as well. Not just a Fnatic, limited edition.
Yeah, I think it's called the Warriors or Champions hoodie, I think. Oh. I don't know. I saw the word limited edition. It's also got a big mural on the back. Not clear. Yeah, it's a limited edition Fnatic hoodie.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna ask one more. I'm gonna ask one more if we're gonna get ready to end it. I think if that's okay. Because we've talked a lot, and I feel like it's like what I said, Matt. We could end it talking forever and ever, but I feel like I always like to end these streams of giving you the platform, I guess, to try and just say, and all of the time you'd spent in the industry, whatever you've done at Jagex, whatever you've done after Jagex, just words of wisdom, I guess, and based on that and stuff you've learned, what would it be?
Definitely don't be afraid to make mistakes. Absolutely. And I think that's an overused expression, but I don't think people take it seriously enough. I don't think people if they hear it and think, oh, a lot of people say that, I don't want to make mistakes. Mistakes are bad. No, make mistakes. Fucking make them. Make loads of them. Just make sure that you don't make them again. It's important that you do, and I have done, and I continue to do so. And it's important that I learn from them. So I definitely make mistakes. And there's a Richard Branson quote that I have in my head that I try and live by. And it's something like, if someone offers you an amazing opportunity and you're not sure if you can do it, say yes, then learn how to do it later. And that embodies everything that I want to do, because, life is short, opportunities are scarce. You might not get the opportunity again, and if you did, you might be too late in order to take it. Just fucking do it and hope for the best, and just learn. Just get it done. That's something I would say. I just want to clear up one other topic quickly, in that I just saw someone mention.
Sure.
Space Cowboy said, how long is your current NDA surrounding your termination? I never signed an NDA. I'm free to talk about whatever it is I want, and so is Jagex. Jagex hasn't said so out of respect for me, and I've not said anything negative about Jagex out of respect for them. It's a mutual thing. Jagex could quite easily tomorrow turn around and say, this is exactly what happened, and I could quite easily turn around and say, well, this is what I know that happened internally that Jagex don't want to be made public. I have no intention of doing that whatsoever, because I respect the people that work there and their position, and I have no reason to slate Jagex. Jagex were correct in doing what they did, and Jagex have little reason to slate me. It's in no one's best interest to fuck each other over, really. So there is no NDA. It's just a mutual respect for one another. We don't see eye to eye, or at least Jagex then and I don't see eye to eye. I can't speak about the team now. I totally have full respect for the current CEO, Phil. He joined at a good time. He worked his way up to where he is. He didn't just get planted there as somebody who didn't know what they're talking about. He joined as a designer and worked his way up, and he changed an awful lot and gave a lot of people a lot of opportunities. There are some things I'm critical of, but that's only my feedback, as I'm sure there are some things that he's critical of me. Fair enough. It's not Rod Cousins. No, Rod Cousins is he was CEO of Jagex for about 2 months while I was there, and in that 2 months, he did not do anything that I could speak positively about. But we went separate ways at that point, so anything that happened after that, I can't comment on. But Phil, who's at the helm of Jagex now, good person to be at the helm.
Gotcha. All right. Wow. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. First of all, obviously, thank you for taking the time and giving me that platform to be the person that talked to you about. Obviously, the first time that you've spoken about anything to do old school, anything in that regard for 5 years. So, first of all, thank you for that on a personal level. Knowing, I know we did me and Dan actually didn't really speak to each other that much because obviously we were so divided on. I was on a completely different floor, so on and so forth. But
I think weirdly, this thing we're doing right now, collectively, this 3.5 hours is the most we've ever spoken.
In ever. 5, yeah, ever. Yeah, correct.
You were on the third-party publishing team working on Block and Load and Ace of Spades and Carnage Racing, maybe. Carnage Racing, fucking hell. Jesus Christ. And then, so, I mean, I never had any reason to speak to you ever. I knew who you were. You were very you were very out there, but again, you had no reason to speak to me. So this has actually been quite a nice exchange because
I think it's been lovely. So yeah. I mean, I think it's been amazing. I just synced just like that. Yeah, it's been awesome. So without further ado, obviously do let me know what you all think of these kind of things. I try to do them here and there where possible, and I will upload this onto YouTube tonight, maybe tomorrow. I don't know when. It'll be whenever Twitch exports it, so you can watch it back for anything you may have missed. And yeah, as for who's next, I'm waiting for Jagex to see if I can talk to Ash. But apart from that, there won't be any more of these for a good couple weeks because I'm gonna kind of cool these down a little bit and have a bit of a break in between and just collectively gather up and see if it's worth doing these kind of things. I think it's been awesome, but I want to make sure that these are fun to do and people are enjoying them. But yeah, Dan, thank you so much. It's been awesome, and it's been an absolute pleasure for all of you to do this for all of you, and hopefully you all enjoyed it. So,
no, I only had positive things to say about the experience. You've been very you've just been very honest and very open, and just given me the potential opportunity to say what I need to say without interrupting and giving your 2 cents. Although you're welcome to, but no, I think people should, everybody in the chat and on YouTube is going to inevitably watch this. Who's going to watch this live? Thumbs up to Shawnee.
Thanks, Dan.
Like the video. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell notification. There you go.
Yeah, and then maybe a Raid Shadow Legends can finally come calling for me. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure. So have yourselves an absolutely wonderful night, day, whatever you may be. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Take care and have a good one.
I'm going to play some ARAMs.